Act 2. Waver had expected the day to end at the peak of triumph with a successful summoning. After the previous night spent in a fierce battle with the cackling chickens, he had studied in his bed this night, satisfied with the pleasant weariness of accomplishment. And
How did this happen?
with a dry wind blowing strongly over the public park of the Shinto area, Waver sat on the bench curling in the lonely coldness. He still couldn't understand. Just how on earth did my plan go wrong? The summoning was a success. That was a satisfactory response. Along with the successful summoning, the status of the invited servant was still imprinted in Waver's consciousness. He was of the rider class. Although that isn't one of the 3 major knights, his basic abilities still were at a more than average level. Without a doubt, he was a powerful servant.
So, I'm asking you, you must be my master, right?
Huh?
That was the big man's second question, a booming voice that could shake up the earth. He had been overpowered beyond his senses from the first question asked with a voice you couldn't fail to hear.
Ah! Yes! I am. I am your master. I'm called Waver Velvet! That's my name. I'm your master.
Though it really was useless in more than one way, Waver stuck to bluffing with all his might to stand up to the muscles in front of him. Even so, he felt dominated already by the physique of the unaware giant.
Then the contract is complete. So, boy, can you lead me to some archives immediately?
Ha!
Waver was blown out of his mind for the second time.
Some books, I'm saying? Books!
The giant servant repeated himself gloomily, leaning toward Waver, stretching a strong arm that looked like the root of a pine tree. I'm going to be killed, Waver immediately thought, feeling like he was floating. The giant had seized his neck and carelessly lifted him. Waver hadn't noticed until then that he had fallen flat on the ground. He realized that was the reason his interlocutor had. Midway started looking even more like a giant.
If you are one of those magi, you should be able to provide some archive. Now, show me around. We need to prepare for war.
War?
Now that the giant mentioned it, Waver simply had totally forgotten about the Holy Grail War. Having lived as a blatant freeloader in a private house, Waver had no kind of archive and reluctantly led Ryder to the library. The central library of the city of Fuyuki was in the public park in the Shinto area and was still under construction. Frankly, it felt awkward to walk through the city in the middle of the night. With the recent strange murder case, the police frequently announced a state of emergency. Waver felt that what the big muscles in front of him could do was a bigger crisis than being questioned by the patrolling police. Fortunately, as soon as they came out of the grove, the giant turned invisible. That must be an ability the servants have, to go into spirit form. Waver felt relieved as he wouldn't look suspicious walking along a big man with armored cloth, but he still felt the pressure of being followed by that overbearing presence. Luckily, they didn't meet anyone when crossing the big bridge of Fuyuki into the Shinto area. Reaching the public park, Waver pointed at the modern architecture in the back.
There should be as many books as you want over there.
Then, the oppression that was weighing on Waver softly went away. Apparently, Ryder was entering the building in spirit form. And so, it had been 30 minutes since he had been left behind. Released from the threat he didn't comprehend, he was finally able to calmly sort his thoughts.
How did this happen?
Suddenly, while Waver was thinking, a breaking sound heartily roared.
Hi?
Jumping out of surprise, he turned around as the closed shutter of the library hall were being distorted and torn off. The one who was calmly walking there, materialized under the moonlight, was none other than Waver's servant, Ryder. With how dark the forest had been, this was actually the first time he could clearly see how he looked in this light. His height easily exceeded 2 meters. His unprotected arms and thighs spread out from his bronze armor, and from the size of the muscles all over his body, he looked like he could kill a bear with his bare hands. On his sternly chiseled features, there were eyes with a dazzling glow and burning red hair and beard. The thick mantle, dyed in a similar red with fringes like his cuffs, was luxuriously decorated, looking just like a curtain wrapping the stage of a theater. The magnificent posture of that big man in front of the modern library made a somewhat funny combination, but Waver took no interest in that as the alarms resounding like a shrill got him ready to flee.
Idiot. Stupid. 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 What were you thinking, kicking the shutters like that? Why aren't you in spirit form like when you entered?
I couldn't pick up this when in spirit form, could I?
The books were one with a thick hardcover and a thin one. Apparently Ryder had taken them from the library, but his master couldn't afford to disturb public order for something so trivial.
Don't be slow. Run. We have to run.
How unsightly to be that flustered. You look like a thief or something.
What thief? What's wrong with you?
Ryder was astonished by the threat in Waver's yell.
You're greatly misunderstood. Those who run away under cover of the night are night burglars. Walking away victoriously is what the king of conquerors does after looting.
You just can't discuss anything with him, Waver thought, scratching at his head madly. At any rate, Ryder apparently wanted to parade through the night with those 2 books, looking like a suspicious cosplayer, with no intention of turning back to spirit form. At the end of his wits, Waver rushed to Ryder, picking the 2 books from his hand.
You're done now, right? Now disappear. Disappear right now. Disappear immediately.
Ooh, then I'll leave this to you. You don't have to repeat yourself like that.
Satisfied, Ryder nodded, then became invisible again. But Waver still couldn't feel relieved. The alarm of the library had to reach some security firm. You wouldn't know how long it would take for security guards to rush in. Oh, what the heck? Who cares?
Ah, damn. How did this happen, man?
Waver didn't know how many times he had lamented like that this night, but he just ran like hell. When he reached the promenade on the border of the broad bridge of Fuyuki, he felt he had run enough to be safe. As someone who usually neglected himself, Waver felt his heart was on the verge of bursting from running such a hellish distance. Without the strength to even stand up, he knelt on the roadside and took another look at the books Ryder took from the library.
An anthology of Homer's poetry? And a world map? Why?
The luxurious book in a hardcover was from the famous poet of ancient Greece. The other thin book was a color print you would use for school. From behind a puzzled Waver, a stern arm suddenly stretched out to pick the atlas up by the fingertips. Once again with the physical body, Ryder heavily sat down cross-legged on the road and, in a clatter, started to turn the pages of the atlas taken back from Waver.
Hey, Ryder, when you mentioned preparations for war,
You can't start a war without a map. Isn't it obvious?
Apparently pleased, Ryder's face lit up in a grin, and he stared at the content of the atlas.
Apparently the end of the world has been discovered, and it even rolls up in a sphere. I see. That's what we have when we draw the round earth on paper.
As far as Waver knows, when a heroic spirit is summoned as a servant by the Grail, they receive minimum information so that their knowledge doesn't conflict with the current era. That means that even this ancient one should understand that the earth is round. So Waver couldn't quite understand why Ryder had acted like a thief to get something like a map.
So, hey boy, where are Macedonia and Persia?
Waver felt discouraged at Ryder's usual arrogance in calling his master boy instead of saying his name. Still, he pointed his finger at a part of the atlas. At that moment,
Wahahaha. Ha ha ha.
Waver was again dumbstruck by Ryder's excited burst of laughter.
Ha ha ha. That's small. Only that on such a big earth. Good. I was worried by an era where there is no unknown land anymore, but if it's that big, then I'm fine.
Suitable for his big frame, Ryder's laughing voice was grand. Waver felt he'd rather face an earthquake or a tornado than oppose a man of that size.
Good. Good. I'm excited. And us, boy. Where are we on this map?
Nervously, Waver pointed to Japan at the far east. Ryder gave a groan of admiration, and, grimly stroking his chin, he gave a satisfied nod.
objective?
First, we go halfway around the globe, westward, straight west. We take over all the countries on the way. Upon my triumphal return in Macedonia, I will make all the people in my land celebrate my revival. Fufaho, how do you like that?
Dumbstruck for a moment? Waver roared, still dizzy from anger.
What the hell did you come here for? The Holy Grail War? The Grail.
But that's just the outset. What's the fuss about?
Ryder sounded as if it had only just now occurred to him.
Right, the Grail. I should have asked about that first. Boy, what would you do of the Grail?
Unable to read Ryder's slow tone, Waver felt a chill he couldn't describe.
Why the change? Why do you ask?
I need to make sure of it. In case you too want to conquer the world, then that'll make you my enemy, right? There is no need for 2 supreme rulers.
It was highly unreasonable of the servant to say that so carelessly over his shoulder, almost turning his back to the master and his command seals. Yet Waver shuddered violently from the hints of cruelty in the big man's audacious voice. The overwhelming fear made him forget his fundamental superiority as a master.
That's stupid. The world, I don't...
Choking until then, Waver suddenly remembers the necessity of keeping his dignity.
Conquering the world, fuh. I have no interest in such a vulgar goal.
Ho?
Ryder's expression completely changed, staring at Waver with great interest.
Do you mean that there is an aspiration greater than wanting the world for a young man? That's interesting. Do tell me.
Waver sneered. Then, with all his courage, started speaking haughtily.
What I wish for is only to be judged equitably. To renew the impression of my colleagues at the clock tower, who never acknowledged my talent.
Before he could finish speaking, an unequaled shock hit Waver. Roughly at the same time, he heard Ryder roar in his loud voice, "That's small," but the shock and the roar were so equally strong that Waver couldn't tell the difference. In fact, Ryder hadn't particularly put more strength in for slapping a mosquito, but that was too strong for the short and fragile Magus, and Waver spun like a top then collapsed on the ground.
Small. That's puny? Ridiculous. Is that all the ambition you would risk your life in battle for? And you're my master? That's really sad.
As if he couldn't accept it, Ryder proclaimed so to the Magus with an amazed expression, far from anger but practically lamenting. Waver had never been confronted with such straightforwardness and violence. Being hit by the truth struck Waver's pride even more than the pain of his cheek. Waver's lips shook with rage, the color drained from his face, but Ryder didn't give it any consideration at all.
If you want respect from others so much, right? I'll tell you, boy. Use the power of the Grail to grow by a good 30 centimeters. When you'll have a higher view over things, you will be looking at most people from above.
You.
That was the greatest humiliation to him. More than rage, Waver felt dizzy as if suffering from anemia, his whole body trembling. Unforgivable. That was plainly unforgivable. That big man, a servant, nothing more than a attendant, had completely denied Waver's pride and got away with it. Even a god wouldn't forgive such an insult. To Waver's dignity, on Waver's right hand, clenched so tightly his nails could tear his palm, power flowed into the 3 seals carved on the back. By these command spells, guardian of the Order of the Grail, may that man, my servant, may Ryder. Make him what exactly? Of course he hadn't forgotten why he left the clock tower, why he came in this remote countryside in the Far East. It was all to gain the Grail. That's why he summoned a servant. Such a crisis with that heroic spirit he bounded with may happen twice. After the 3rd time, the command seals are gone. That means a decisive defeat as a master. The first of these serious situations could not be right now, could it? Not even 1 hour after the summoning? Ashamed, Waver looked downward and breathed deeply several times. Then by natural reasoning and calculation, he shut down the irritation in his heart. Impatience leads nowhere. Certainly Ryder's attitude is hardly forgivable, but the servant hasn't opposed his master yet, nor has he disregarded any order. Waver can brandish his whip only 3 times to hit this wild beast. Isn't it careless to use it when only barked at? Having regained his composure, Waver finally looked up again. Ryder was still sitting on the ground, disparaging his master, or rather, having even forgotten his master's existence, he was reading the atlas. Waver spoke at his incredibly wide back.
If you can just get the Grail, then I have no complaint. I don't care what you will do after that. You can fly wherever you want, Macedonia or the South Pole.
Foo. Ryder breathed dispiritedly, or indifferently, you couldn't tell with his nasal breathing.
Anyway, you're sure you have your priorities right? You will seriously participate in the Grail War?
I got it already, yeah.
Ryder lifted his face from the atlas and looked at Waver from over his shoulder with a depressed grumble.
The first thing is to beat 6 heroic spirits, right? That sounds troublesome, but certainly, without the Grail, I can't start anything. Rest assured, I'll get that treasure.
His speech was calm and composed, but Waver was not completely convinced. Of course, that heroic spirit was not a deception. As far as Waver can grasp by being a master, the servant he had been granted has outstanding abilities. But in a conflict, servants don't only compete on skills. The Holy Grail War isn't something so nice that you can move on with big muscles.
You seem very confident, but what are your chances of victory?
With a daring provocation, Waver put forth all his bluff to scowl at Ryder. I'm the master. Of course I can afford a high-handed attitude. That's what he is thinking.
So, you say you want to see my power?
Catching his glance, Ryder changed to a quiet tone that somehow made Waver uneasy.
Yes, that's right. Isn't it obvious? I need proof that I can trust you.
Laughing from his nose, the giant servant pulled his sword from the scabbard at his waist. It was a valuable sword, splendidly arranged, but it didn't feel like it had the prana of a noble phantasm in itself. Yet when Ryder took the sword, the dangerous atmosphere slowly made Waver uneasy. He can't be thinking of murdering me for my loud mouth? Without noticing his master trembling violently, Ryder lifted his naked sword overhead.
By this one strike, I, Alexander, king of conquerors, claim for supremacy.
Having loudly called out to the empty sky, he violently swung down his blade at the empty space. Just then, a thundering roar and a tremor shook the riverbed at night like a thunderbolt, in a magnificent shock. His guts turned around, Waver lost balance and tumbled on the ground for the second time. If Ryder's blade wasn't striking at anything, just what did it cut? Waver saw it. The empty space torn apart like a gaping mouth, and the absurdly powerful thing that appeared there. And Waver remembered just what a servant is. In the legend of a hero, there is not only the man that was the hero, but the anecdotes about him, his arms and weapons. All of this is the symbol of his existence. Those symbols are the ultimate mysteries that the servant, the embodiment of the heroic spirit, carries as a trump card. Those are the deadly weapons commonly called noble phantasms. Thus, there is no mistake. That which appeared at the empty space struck by Ryder, that must be, without a doubt, his noble phantasm. Hidden in this existence, the density of the outrageous magical power outside of normality. Waver can grasp that. That was a miracle that had transcended humanity, transcended magecraft.
That's how I struck the shaft and got this. The offering to Zeus from the King Gordius. It must be because the reputation of this that I landed the Rider class.
With a smile glowing with pride in front of that weapon, Ryder didn't even sound like he was boasting. That must be the proof he has used it regularly, putting an immense faith in it.
So, that here was only the beginning. The noble phantasm I really rely on is yet something else. Well, when the opportunity appears, I'll show you. If I meet a formidable opponent worthy of it, that is.
In awe, Waver viewed Ryder in a new light. Precisely because he is a magus, he understands the destructive power of the noble phantasm in front of him. Compared to a modern-day weapon, that would rival a strategic bomber. He would transform the whole Shinto area into scorched earth if he was left wild for not even an hour. There is no doubt left. Ryder here is the strongest servant Waver wished for. His might already surpasses Waver's imagination. If there is an enemy this man cannot defeat, then it has to be an existence that cannot be taken down even by divine punishment.
Hey there, boy. What's with the pale face? I haven't even begun yet.
Feeling malicious, Ryder speaks to the fallen master.
If you want the Grail quickly, we should locate one or two heroic spirits rapidly. I'll immediately trample them. In the meantime, I can look at the atlas to kill boredom. You're fine with that, right?
His soul having left his face, Waver slowly nodded. Sealed in ice, the furthermost Einspurn castle. That day, the old castle deep in the mountains, where people do not go, quietly preserving the lives of ancient magi, was released from the snowstorm. It can't be reached until the sky cleared up, but it is remarkably brighter than the days when the sky whitens up in snow. There are no flying birds or green plants on the soil of winter, but plenty of light. On those days, however busy or tired the father is, they go out together in the forest outside the castle. That was the first unwritten rule between Ilyasvil von Einspurn and Emiya Kiritsugu. Saying so, the exalted Ilyasvil quickly moves into the forest before her father. She is pitiful with her small boots in the thick snow, but her fidgety eyes don't miss anything of the surrounding trees, not careless for 1 minute. Right now, the girl was in the midst of a fierce battle with her father.
Oh, here's one, the first for today.
Hearing the triumphing Kiritsugu behind her, the eyes of the surprised Ilyasvil changed into the color of anger as she turned around. Returning a bold smile to his beloved daughter red with vexation, Kiritsugu pointed at a twig above his head. From a frost branch of walnut, a humble winter sprout was sticking out.
For Hahu, I get the first point. Let's keep that rhythm.
Ilyasvil had to hurry. Watching over her, Kiritsugu couldn't stop smiling bitterly. Checking one by one which winter sprout her father found, the girl can see her impending death for today. Apparently, today is the day she will have to reveal her skills. Kiritsugu giggled wickedly from behind the merry Ilya.
For Hoo-Hoo, Daddy found a second one too.
This time, Ilya sprang like a sprayed cat. This time, her girlish pride is at stake if she wants to claim she doesn't miss anything. Actually, she didn't miss any. Only the one she is up against is childishly cunning. Ilya's expected reaction, 10 seconds later, had Kiritsugu suppress his laughter as he pointed at what he said was his second winter bud. What Kiritsugu pointed at is a branch Ilya hadn't considered it to be her target until then.
No, Ilya. This branch is a wingnut, a variety of walnut. So that too is the winter bud of a walnut.
As if she had been tricked by a fox, Ilyasvil remained silent for 2 or 3 seconds. Then she shouted, her cheeks all red. As a matter of fact, he was indeed unfair. Since before the last time, Kiritsugu was counting the wingnuts with the walnuts. Not only was it fake, it was indeed a foul play.
Oh, but if Daddy doesn't do that, he'll never win.
An extremely angry Ilyasvil starts pounding on her father's knees.
But Ilya, isn't it a new opportunity to learn something? In fact, wingnuts aren't edible like walnuts, remember that.
Ilyasvil growls at him, not caring about it at all.
That bothers me. Sorry, Sorry, I apologize.
From the ultimatum, Kiritsugu apologized obediently. With that, Ilyasfil gradually regains her good humor.
I swear, the wing nuts are gone.
But I still have the field nuts. Kiritsugu snickered silently. Ilyasfil, who didn't know how to distrust people yet, threw out her chest in pride, nodding with satisfaction at her incorrigible father.
Yes, you honor me, princess.
In sign of allegiance for today's walnut hunt, Kiritsugu then played the horse. Riding on her father's shoulders was by far what Ilyasfil liked best. Kiritsugu's long legs can even cross the deep snow Ilyasfil can't walk in. With a higher point of view, she could also hunt walnuts more efficiently.
Yawall.
Kiritsugu comes out of a grove, his daughter straddling on his neck. The thrill makes Ilyasfil kick up and laugh merrily. Such disdain for her father's shoulders made him sad. Having no experience in raising children before Ilyasfil, Kiritsugu doesn't know how they grow up. But he understands that it isn't normal for his daughter, who turns 8 this year, to weigh 15 kilos. Perhaps the absurd adjustments she received at birth are the reason. To Kiritsugu and Irisfil, it was obvious she would be late in reaching adulthood. Will her body turn into that of an adult as years pass or not? No, rather, they had no hope. As a magus, Kiritsugu has already closed his ruthless diagnosis. There is 80 to 90% chances that Ilyasvil's growth will stop before her secondary sex characteristic appear. Even so, rather than seeing her future as bad luck, she must have plenty of happiness. That wish is only the parent's ego. Yet, the pain of that thought drilling his chest was proof of the love of the man named Kiritsugu. Sizing from a window of the castle, a pair of jade eyes were watching over the small figures of the father and daughter playing at the entrance of the forest. The young woman standing at the window is far from being weak or transient. She has blonde hair, visibly light and soft, and wears an old-style dress wrapped around her slender physique that evidently suited a young woman secluded in her room, but the atmosphere surrounding her stiffened the air in the room by her just standing there with her intense rigor. Although, rather than the coldness of ice, she has the coolness of a clear, pure stream. She was one that somehow doesn't fit the winter scenery of the melancholic Einsburn castle.
What are you looking at, Saber?
As Irisfil called her from behind, the young woman at the window. Saber turned around.
Kiritsugu and your daughter are playing in the forest. Outside.
Doubtful, perplexed, frowning a little with a stiff expression, her beautiful look isn't impaired. More than the humor floating on a smile, the slackless serenity of her strained look suited her. She is that sort of rare beauty. Can you believe that her young and vivacious presence is that of a materialized heroic spirit? But she definitely is Saber. She was one of the 7 heroic spirits invited by the Grail, with the class of the strongest sword, a full-fledged servant. At her side, Irisfil looked through the window. That was the moment Kiritsugu rushed into the forest carrying Ilyasfil on his back.
You are surprised to see Kiritsugu like that, aren't you?
Saber nodded honestly to the smiling Irisfil. From her position, after all, she couldn't see the girl's face and barely saw the silver hair inherited from her mother. But the shrilling voice she heard just before they left her field of vision was, certainly, overflowing with joy. Just that was enough to guess the harmony between the frolicking father and daughter.
To be honest, I was under the impression that my master was a more cold-hearted person.
At Saber's words, Irisfil gave an embarrassed smile.
Well, this isn't without reason.
Since her summoning, Saber hadn't received a word from her master Kiritsugu. In the end, servants are only a tool to serve the masters, and that was definitely how a magus would treat them. Nevertheless, Kiritsugu's attitude toward Saber was too much. Not even speaking to her, ignoring her questions, barely looking at her, Kiritsugu kept pushing away the heroic spirit he had summoned himself. Although she wouldn't show any of it, Saber was definitely highly dissatisfied with the attitude of that man. Obviously, the Kiritsugu she had been attached to was far different from the man playing with his daughter outside the castle.
If this is Kiritsugu's true face, then I must have fallen in great disgrace with my master.
As Saber muttered, Irisfil unintentionally chuckled. Her pained face showed her true motives that were normally hidden on a handsome profile. Saber was even more unsettled.
This isn't so funny, Irisfil. I'm sorry. I was wondering if you were still holding a grudge from when you were summoned. A little. I understand that my appearance is different from what anyone would expect, but that shouldn't be something that would surprise the both of you so much.
Despite her gallant dignity, Saber truly looked like a girl not even past her teens. When she appeared in the glowing summoning circle, both Kiritsugu and Irisfil had been struck speechless. The owner of the golden scabbard from Cornwall, that is the one known as the sole bearer of the holy sword Excalibur, Nobody could have guessed the true identity of the heroic spirit Arthur Pendragon was a young girl.
Certainly I have acted as a man, and have wished that that lie was.
You may say this, but that's inevitable. Your legend is very well known, and it has been dramatized for 1,500 years. That's quite a gap with the image we had of the King Arthur.
As Irisfiel smiles uncomfortably, Saber gives a dissatisfied sigh.
Of course you would wonder about my appearance somehow. The instant I drew the sword of contract from the stone, I stopped aging through its magic, keeping my apparent youth by people didn't even question my appearance at that time to begin with. As I was king, the only thing I was asked to do is fulfill my duty as a king.
How harsh a youth had that been. The kingdom of Britain exposed by the invasion of pagans, thrown on the verge of destruction. Following the predictions of Amagus, the young king, incarnation of a dragon, was burdened with the duty of the savior, invincible through 10-12 years of battling. In spite of these feats, this was the ill-fated ruler whose throne was finally taken over by his own blood, betrayed, never forgiven for ending their glory. The truth that such a delicate girl was burdened with a so violent, painful fate weighed on Irisfiel's heart.
Does Kirisugo hate me for my womanhood because I am not worthy of a sword?
Saber muttered in a dry voice, watching Kiritsugu disappear into the forest afar, touching Irisfiel's feelings.
That's wrong. He understands your power. That man isn't so stupid as to misjudge your heroic spirit who was placed into the saber class. There must be another reason if he got angry.
To get angry?
Saber reacted to what she heard.
Do you mean I made Kiritsugu angry? I cannot understand that. I still haven't spoken to him even once.
Then it could be something unrelated to you. What he is angry at must be the legend of the King Arthur that was transmitted to us.
If the heroic spirit Kiritsugu summoned had been the grown man King Arthur that the legend told of, then he probably wouldn't have rejected his servant so much. Simply, for him who kept his feelings from mixing up, discussions were best kept at the required minimum. Then in the end, his daring disregard was the direct result of a highly emotional response. The one who pulled the sword stuck in the stone was a young girl. That truth Kiritsugu had just learned was the source of his open indignation at the legend of the King Arthur.
He must be angry at the people who surrounded you in your era, at the cruelty of those who forced the duty of a king on a small girl.
That wasn't the case. I was prepared, ever since I pulled the sword from the stone.
Saber said so without reserve, her expression still cool and clear. Troubled, Irisfiel gave a short nod.
The fact that you accepted that fate like that is all the more provoking. Perhaps it is on that point he is angry at you, the girl named Artoria.
Saber briefly lowered her eyes, unable to answer. But when she immediately looked up again, her eyes were still and obstinate.
This is being too emotional. There was nobody who would complain to those who made the decision, in my era.
And that's why he remained silent.
With Irisfiel's fast answers, Saber can only falter this time. Irisfiel could but agree on that. If Kiritsugu was to spend time with this proud heroic spirit, he would always feel like their minds are too different from each other's. Irisfiel could understand each other's complaint and had as much compassion for each of them. So the fact that these two would never agree was again Irisfiel's resigned conclusion.
I thank you, Irisfiel. Without a woman like you, I might have lost this Grail War without even fighting.
The same to you. I want my husband to be the one to reach the Grail.
Irisfiel, what kind of person do you view Kiritsugu as?
A guide as well as a husband. The one who gave a meaning to my life. But that's not what you want to know about, is it?
Saber nodded. What she wanted to know isn't about Irisfiel's subjectivity, but about the side of Emiya Kiritsugu Saber doesn't know.
To say the truth, he is a kind person. Only, because he was too nice, he couldn't forgive the cruelty of the world. He chose to be even more cold-hearted to fight against that.
I can understand such a determination. With a standpoint any lower, one would have to throw away his human sensitivity.
Saying this, you can't think that Kiritsugu and Saber are any alike. Perhaps Kiritsugu's disgust toward the heroic spirit of the King Arthur was of the same kind.
To save the world with the power of the Grail, is that what you are saying? What your and Kiritsugu's wishes?
Yes. Mine is only a reflection of his wish, though. But I do think it is something worth risking your life for.
At Irisfiel's words, Saber nodded. Her eyes set ablaze as well.
The wish I have for the Grail is also similar. I want to help the Britain I couldn't save by myself. I think what you and Kiritsugu want is right. It is a path to be proud of.
Right?
Smiling, Irisfiel replied ambiguously. Pride That precisely is the problem. Her husband's words came back in Irisfield's mind. The true reason why Kiritsuguru and Saber behave so differently. The two of you will be flowers on the battleground, never running away or hiding, shine, so that nobody will look away from the servant Saber, because those who will look at Saber will be turning their backs to me. Kiritsugo has no intention of leaving the battle to Irisfield and Saber. Rather, he intends to actively transform the progress of the war by his own means. He will be an assassin sneaking up from behind the enemy, and Saber has the role of the lure that will make his trap certain, no more than a feint. Irisfield couldn't say anything, but it was clear what methods Kiritsugu would adopt once the war starts. What will the proud and honest knight think after that? Thinking of it, Irisfield is worried about it.
Irisfield, you have a deep understanding of your husband Kiritugo, and have much faith in him.
Unaware of Irisfield's melancholy, Saber watched the harmony between the father and daughter through the window.
Looking at it that way, the two of you appear to be a pretty normal couple looking for happiness. But if Kiritugo thinks that I too should have looked for happiness as a person and not as a king the same way, both are the same wish one can't help having.
So you don't have a grudge against him anymore?
Of course I don't.
With a delicate face, Saber nodded, and Irisfield felt like she was betraying the servant.
But, Irisfield, is it all right to tell me about something like that?
Eh?
Asking again, Saber's eyes seemed to want to tell more.
I mean, you will need to accept leaving your daughter, like Kiritsugo. Tomorrow, won't we fly over to Japan for the Grail?
That. Dash, it's fine. There is no need for me and my child to part.
Irisfield smiled peacefully to show gratitude toward Saber's anxiety. But somehow, the lonely hollowness of that smile troubled her.
If I am to cease to exist as Irisfield, it doesn't mean I will disappear. When she grows up, I am sure she will understand. Because she is an Einsburn woman like me.
She couldn't grasp the enigmatic words of Irisfield, but Saber's face stiffened at the sinister omen she could feel hidden inside them.
Irisfield, you will definitely survive. I will protect you until the end. I swear it on the pride of my sword.
The knight's solemn statement made Irisfield smile brightly.
Saber, get the Grail. For yourself and for your master. Then the Einsburns will reach their 1,000-year desire, and me and my daughter will be freed from our destiny. Dash, we rely only on you, Artoria.
Again, Saber couldn't comprehend the meaning of Irisfield's anxious smile. Her hair glittering like snow, and her radiant beauty. That woman filled with a warm kindness. Just what fate was she born tied to? Dash for the knight to know the complete truth is a revelation that is yet to come. Fie sick! The fair hunt for Winterbuds of Wingnuts ended with Ilyasfield's victory, ending a series of 3 consecutive defeats for the champion. Also, no field nut trees were found in the Einsburn forest. After the battle, the two casually walked back. Because they walked deep into the forest, the majesty of the Einsburn castle has become a silhouette in the haze. Having fulfilled her revenge, Ilyasviel looks up with a large smile at her father. Unable to look straight at her, Kirisubu feigns serenity as best as he could.
Yes. Next time, Daddy won't lose.
The smile of his beloved daughter was becoming too much of a burden for the man. Just how should he tell her? Until the end, maybe that will be the one thing he will think of. This is the worst struggle for Kiritsugo. But, by all means, he must win. For that purpose, he can't afford to give up his life. So, the promise to his daughter to play again in the winter forest is only a small victory. Save everything. Abandon everything for that. To the man who swore to do that, love could only be a thorn. Whenever he loved someone, it was a curse to have to be ready to keep it hidden in his heart. This was the fate that burdened Amiya Kiritsugu in exchange for his ideal. Love was a torture that could not be healed. Then why he was questioning himself when he looks at the frozen white sky and earth. Why did he love so much the one woman and the child he shares his blood with? Unaware of her father's suffering, Ilyasfield asked with a lively voice.
Daddy will come back in a couple of weeks, probably. Dash for Mom, that should be. Much longer, I think.
Hearing her reply without a shadow on her face was the finishing blow for Kiritsugu. His knees lost the strength to push through the snow-covered path. His wife was ready. His daughter was prepared. For the truth was that Amiya Kiritsugu was snatching her mother away from this young girl.
I see.
At that point, Kiritsugu became aware of the blood dyeing his hands crimson red. He didn't know how many people he had killed, how impure his arms were. For you to hold a child as a father, that is definitely unforgivable, he told himself. But wasn't that warning the same as running away? This child will never be embraced by her mother ever again already. And if her father Kiritsugu abandons that duty as well, Who will be holding Ilyasville again?
Hey, Ilya.
Kirisugu stopped his daughter walking beside him, dropped down, and wrapped his arms around the girl. In 8 years, every time he held that small body in his arms, Kiritsugu doubted his fatherhood deep inside. Disgusted by his acting as a father, he could only scorn at himself for being unable to do otherwise. But this too is reaching an end. As this child's only father, he must hold her in the warmth of his arms, without running away, without lying.
Will you wait for me, Ilya? Can you stand to be alone until Daddy comes back?
Memories of this day will probably fill Ilyasville with joy until the end. Her cheerful voice holds no grief.
Then Daddy will promise you something too. I won't make you wait. Daddy will definitely come back quickly.
Emiya Kiritsugu took on another heavy burden. Enduring the thorn that is love that pierced his whole body, he tightly embraced his child for an eternity. Reciting the summoning chant, Ryunosuke drew on the wooden floor of the living room with his bloody brush. The ceremony really is some serious business. That ambiance isn't Ryunosuke's style at all. The serious mood was for his personal satisfaction. After all, what's important is the feeling. Having practiced the magic circle all night, he finished it in one go. There was no need for reserves anymore then. Even though he had killed the parents and the eldest daughter to draw their blood, the leftover blood seemed suitable for some fine art on the walls of the room. Waiting for a reaction, he turned toward the last survivor rolled up in the corner, a grade school boy gagged with a rope. The young kid was crying, his eyes swollen, looking at his torn-up sister and parents. Asking the shivering kid, Ryunosuke tilted his head in a dramatic act. Obviously, he wasn't expecting a reply. With his mouth gagged, all the kid could do was tremble in fear. Kids are nice. Ryunosuke liked kids. Frightened adults cry and scream, so on that part, kids really are better. You can just laugh it off when they get incontinent. The blood of 3 people was enough, and that was his only reason for letting the youngest child live. Though he did think he'd take the time to enjoy killing him later. After the completion of the ceremony, the young kid could understand well enough Ryunosuke's idea. Ryunosuke beamed when the kid, his eyes wide open, started twisting and struggling around without a scream. The unexpected sting was like a cold shower on Ryunosuke's frenzy. That was the back of his right hand. He felt an intense pain as if he had bathed his hand in a powerful poison. As soon as the pain started, the swelling calmed down and stuck on the surface of his skin. Somehow, a pattern like a tattoo was there on his pained right hand, and he had no idea why. Rather than feeling anxious, Ryunosuke reacted dandily. That incomprehensible pattern of 3 intertwined snakes resembled some tribal tattoo, which didn't look half bad. But his foppishness lasted only a moment. Ryunosuke turned around in surprise when he felt the air move behind him.
I ask of you.
From inside the enveloping haze, a soft yet strangely carrying voice called out. The light had left the magic circle, the radiance was disappearing, and the circle drawn on the floor with fresh blood was blackened as if burned up. And from inside the fading mist, the owner of the voice earlier suddenly showed his figure to Ryunosuke, a young face without a single crease yet. A pair of large, hulling eyes and greasy cheeks. Along with the deathly pallor of his face, he reminded Ryunosuke of a painting from Munch. His garments, too, were quite odd. His figure, tall enough to reach the clouds, was wrapped in a much-folded robe, decorated with luxurious latches made of precious metals. His whole style looks exactly like some evil magician from a manga.
You who called me, you who requested for me, summoning the spirit of the caster class. I ask for your name. Who are you?
Ryunosuke gave a small response. The one who had come out of the summoning circle with great flashes and smokes was an ordinary human. That was definitely not what he had expected. No exaggerated monster, just a perfectly normal human? Ryunosuke was puzzled. His clothes were definitely queer, but did that mean this man was a real demon? Scratching his head for a moment, Ryunosuke took his decision. The man in robe nodded. Apparently he had ignored everything beside the name.
Very well. The contract is complete. Your desire for the Holy Grail is my desire as well. We shall make the cauldron of heaven ours.
On the moment, Ryunosuke didn't get what it was about. Right, thinking again, didn't the old book found in the storehouse mention something like that? And he had skipped it because the passage was dull. Ryunosuke waved his hand lightly, before pointing with his chin at the kid rolled up in the corner. The other man, with a face as expressionless as a mask, gauged the tied kid and Ryunosuke. Feeling anxious, Ryunosuke couldn't tell by the silence if his words and intentions had hit home. Maybe that was asking for too much. After all, who decided that demons eat children? Silently, the man picked a book from a pocket of his robe. The bulky book appeared to be an antique treasure from an ancient era. No doubt it was some gadget of the demon. Ryunosuke noticed in one glance what hide the cover was made of. Ryunosuke can recognize it because he once tried to put up a lampshade with human skin pelt off a victim. Eventually, he got discouraged at his poor handicraft midway, but he can't help but respect an elder who has achieved a similar work through the end. The man, casting only a glance at Ryunosuke, ignored his compliment and gently opened the book, his hand rapidly flipping through the pages. He then muttered one or two words that made no sense, and as if it was enough, closed the book before putting it back in his pocket. Leaving the helpless Ryunosuke, the man walked toward the boy rolled up on the floor. At the strange events that had kept happening, the boy winced harder as if death was inevitable, trying to crawl away from the man. Looking at the child in such a state, the man seemed suddenly full of compassion and kindness, which startled Ryunosuke. What does that mean?
You have nothing to be afraid of, my boy.
Unlike what his odd appearance suggested, the strange man gently spoke to the boy. The imprisoned kid gradually notices his warmth and looks at the man questioningly. As a reply, the man gives a smiling nod, bending toward the boy and extending his hand at him, gently untying his ropes and gag.
Can you stand?
As an encouragement, the man patted the boy on the back, helping him up. Of course, Ryunosuke had no doubt the man was a devil, but he was really dissatisfied with how he was treating the child. Is he actually going to let him live? Anyway, no matter how you looked at him, the man is queer. When silent, his features would look dreadful like the face of a corpse, but when smiling without any apparent maliciousness, he would seem as pure as a saint.
Now, my boy, the door over there will lead you out of this room. Don't look around, walk straight forward by yourself. Can you do that by yourself?
Yes. At the boy's brave nod, the man responded with a bright smile, softly pushing his back. The boy started running lightly across the blood-stained living room as he avoided looking at the corpses of both his parents and his sister as instructed. Of course, Ryunosuke couldn't ignore it all and spoke, but the man quickly interrupted him with a hand sign. Overpowered, Ryunosuke helplessly watched the kid escape. The boy opened the door and stepped into the corridor. In front of him was the entranceway. His eyes, drowned in fear until then, were now shining again in hope and relief. The climax came the next instant. The boy was leaving the stairs behind him, facing the entranceway. From the second floor, invisible from the living room, something suddenly fell down in an avalanche on the young boy. A bundle of heavy ropes, no, a flock of countless snakes, an indescribable life form, or rather a living creature twined around the boy's whole body, and with an otherworldly force took away the young body up to the second floor. Then, a soul-rending scream, the clicking tongues of an infinite number of creatures, and the echo of small bones crushed. The rashness of whatever was happening on the upper floor easily stimulated imagination even without witnessing it. The strange man closed his eyes and raised his face, listening to the nightmarish sound, drunk it inattentively. His hand shivered. Apparently he was deeply moved, but the emotion was just as great for Ryunosuke. No, as he didn't expect something like that to happen. The catharsis was far more intense for him.
There is a certain freshness in fear.
The lingering memory of the horror he had himself planned out hadn't drawn out yet. There now was no remaining doubt he was a devil when he started speaking, and his voice sounded like he was entranced in a dream.
Fright is about the feeling that you will die. The true meaning of terror doesn't lie in a static condition, but in a change. This is the instant when hope is turned into despair. How was it? The smell of fresh fear and death.
Ryunosuke was at loss of words. The thing that was feasting on the kid's remains upstairs was, apparently, the man's doing. He was the one who had appeared from the bloody magic circle, after all. There was no possible doubt something had happened when he had opened his book with the binding made out of human skin. The method was nerve-wracking, but that is what is splendid in this philosophy. Ryunosuke was no match for the creativity and perfect aesthetics of such evilness. Him who held such a vivid and moving aesthetics of death deserved the greatest praises. Feeling like dancing with joy, Ryunosuke grabbed the man's hand and shook it. Making friends with this strange man was no less moving than meeting a celebrity. The mass murderer Ryunosuke finally felt adoration and respect from the depth of his heart for someone in this boring world.
You are a pleasant fellow.
Understanding of Ryunosuke's emotion, the man replied gently to his violent handshake with a pure smile.
Ryunosuke, was it? It is a good omen I got a master as understanding as you. This is developing more and more into an ideal situation for my aspirations.
When a summoning is made without a catalyst, the heroic spirit will be one that has a similar mindset as the master. The one summoned by the vicious murderer was one who had left his name on extremely cruel acts. He was a heroic spirit with a taste for true tyranny. Or rather, based on that nature, it would be more suitable to call him a vengeful spirit instead of a heroic spirit. Remembering about the important parts, Ryonosuke started acting more familiarly.
My name, yes. Indeed. For this era, you could call me
The man put a finger to his lips. Then after thinking a little,
Ben. For now, you can call me Bluebeard. Pleased to meet you.
he replied familiarly with an angelic smile. Thus, for the last position of the fourth heaven's feel, the master and his servant Castor completed the contract. This is how, without knowing the meaning of the Grail War or his nature as a magus, the casual murderer received command seals and a servant. For a trick of fate, this may be the foulest play.
Vain prudence is unnecessary. Have no fear of facing Archer. You need to obliterate Tohsaka Tokiomi quickly.
That was the order of his master Kirei. Against the despised weakest fighter assassin, he won't be afraid and won't hurry. It should be easy to betray the miscalculations of the heroic spirit Archer summoned by Tohsaka Tokiomi. Halfway through the garden, the blind spot of the bounded field one could just pass through vanished. From there on, the barrier has to be destroyed by physical mean, and one need to progress while removing it. It is impossible to proceed while invisible in spirit form. Leaning over the shadow of the vegetation, Assassin returned from spirit form to physical form, exposing his bony mask and tall, lean figure. He can feel many eyes all over him from afar, different from the bounded field of the Tohsaka residence. The familiars of other masters must be observing the Tohsaka residence from outside the barriers. As long as he remains unnoticed from Tokiomi himself, there is no need to worry about any peeping toms. Tokiomi's rivals disputing the Grail would never warn him of Assassin's infiltration. If one competitor drops, the others should remain unconcerned spectators. Snickering without a sound, Assassin extended his hand at the first keystone that binds the berry berk. The next instant, that hand was pierced through by a spear flying from above, shining like a flash of lightning. An intense pain, terror, and above all, shock. The simple spear strike was completely unexpected, and Assassin swung his head upward, looking for the thrower. On top of the roof of the Tohsaka residence, a golden shadow stands magnificently. That divine radiance even steals the dignity of the starlit sky and puts the moon to shame. The rage of being wounded made Assassin forget the pain, but he could only fear the overwhelming coercion.
You worm crawling on the ground, whose pardon do you seek?
The golden man asks indifferently to the assassin hidden on the ground, looking down at him with a pair of disdainful, burning crimson eyes.
You can't look at me. Worms can only look at the ground when they die, like the worms they are.
Around the golden shadow, even more glows appeared, growing to a countless number. Suddenly sliding out of midair were swords. Halberds, not one of them were the same. All of them treasured weapons with dazzling ornaments. And all of them were aimed at Assassin. I can't win. Without even thinking, Assassin realized it instinctively. Winning against him is impossible. It's stupid to even think about facing him. If he is able to hit Assassin, a servant, it means that Golden Shadow is definitely a servant. And if he is stopping an invasion into the Tohsaka mansion, then the master is Tokiomi. In other words, he must be the heroic spirit archer. There's no need to fear that. In his pledge to his master, Assassin knew there was no contradiction in Kirei's words. In front of such an overwhelming enemy, fear is, yes, there is no place for fear. There can only be despair and abandon. Slashing through the air in a howl, an infinity of shining blades started raining down on Assassin. Assassin felt the eyes, the familiars observing from outside the place. The first servant to fall in the Fourth War of the Holy Grail met an unsightly end without even a retort, witnessed by the other masters. And at the last moment, Assassin understood the true intention of his master, Kotomine Kirei, and of the leader, Tohsaka Tokiomi. Sazek relaxing in a comfortable chair of his room. Tohsaka Tokiomi listened to the roar of the countless noble phantasms drilling the ground, tearing flesh to pieces.
Well, things are looking up. Now,
The magus muttered to himself, his profile glowing a different gold from the other one under the lampshade. Just by its presence, the golden figure stood out in the dimly lit surroundings, like the one on the roof that just executed the invader. Turning into spirit form to come back to Tokiomi's room, then again in physical form, the servant archer stood proudly beside his master, who bore a satisfied face. The figure looking around is tall and dignified and wearing a golden armor. He is a young man with golden hair standing up like a blazing flame, handsome with an elegant face. His eyes, crimson like blood, are visibly not those of a human, and whoever is stared at cannot but wither in front of their mysterious radiance.
You made me perform some extremely trifling duty, Tokiomi.
Tokiomi stood up from his chair and bowed respectfully, yet elegantly.
I am sorry for your trouble, king amongst kings.
As a master to the summoned servant, those were manners more humble than expected. But Tohsaka Tokiomi expressed his gratitude without reserve to the heroic spirit he had summoned. As someone from a valued lineage himself, Tohsaka Tokiomi can perfectly discern nobility better than anyone. He is the guest of honor Tokiomi has summoned to win this fourth heaven's feel, not a humble servant, but the greatest hero. This man, Archer, in the present era, is the king of heroes, Gilgamesh, the tyrant who ruled ancient Mesopotamia, part divine, part human. As a hero, rooted in the oldest origin of mankind, he is amongst the oldest kings. Tokiomi firmly believes in the value of nobility. Even with the supremacy of the command seals, or with the best contract, nothing can surpass ranks. Even if he was a servant, that golden young man was one who deserved the highest honor.
The outcome of tonight's event will save us a lot of complications. Having witnessed the power of the King of Heroes, no stray dog will try to bite in vain.
Archer appreciated the truth in Tokiomi's words. Tokiomi, in his upright attitude, lost in more flattery than it was necessary, also has no hope in this era. The King of Heroes could understand that.
In a little while, the field beasts will understand who the hunting lion really is. Please have patience until then.
Very well. I will just walk off my boredom. This era seems fairly interesting.
At Archer's words, Tokiomi glossed over his slight irritation with a sour look. Certainly, the servant he has contracted with is the strongest, but he gives him headaches when he wanders away for his selfish curiosity. In the present world, he hasn't spent even one whole night quietly in the Tohsaka mansion. Tokiomi devoted much effort to keeping Archer inside the mansion for Assassin's Raid tonight.
Does this era please you?
Its ugliness is beyond help, but it does hold love as it is. What is essential is whether or not there is a treasure worthy of my fortune.
Bragging with a cynical smile, Archer gazes at Tokiomi with his red eyes full of divine authority.
If there is not a single thing worthy of my favor in this world, the price for summoning me in vain will be heavy, Tokiomi.
Rest assured, the Grail will definitely catch your attention, King of Heroes.
Confident, Tokiomi replied without fear.
That will be mine to decide. Well, this is fine. For the time being, I will do as you say. Every treasure in this world is mine. Depending on what kind of treasure this Holy Grail is, I will not overlook mongrels fighting for it.
With that haughty declaration, the King of Heroes turned his heels and canceled his physical form, vanishing like a mist.
I will be your lion, and I expect to be amused. I will leave the details to you, Tokiomi.
Tokiomi dropped his head at the shadowed voice without a shadow. He didn't stop his reverence until the presence of the heroic spirit had disappeared from the room.
Well.
The magus sighed deeply when the pressure from the golden man went away. Servants receive certain skills when a class is attributed for the heroic spirit in the present world. Those skills are abilities such as Assassin's Presence Concealment, Caster's Territory Creation, and Sabers and Riders Riding. By the same way, a servant being assigned the class Archer in the present world possesses the unique skill of independent action. This ability means he is capable of being severed from the master supplying prana and act in autonomy. This is useful, for example, if a master needs to concentrate all of his prana for a single large spell, or if the master is injured and unable to supply enough prana. Yet on the other hand, it becomes harder for the master to have the servant accompany him and be completely under his control. As an archer, Gilgamesh's skill of independent action is ranked A. With this alone, he can use noble phantasms at will in battle and remain in the present world without the master's backup. But by having this, the King of Heroes was able to ignore Tokiomi's inclination and stroll around in Fuyuki City as he wished. Constantly apart from each other, Tokiomi can never be aware of his own servant's whereabouts or of what he is doing. Having not a single interest in his own world, Tokiomi cannot understand what amusement a man like the King of Heroes can find by walking around to watch people's lives.
Anyway, for now, I can have Kirei handle it. Everything is going as planned for the moment.
Snickering, Tokiomi looked down at the garden through the window. The excess of destruction gouged when Assassin crept in made the scene look like it had been bombed. Faizingus Assassin has been killed. Disappointed by how quickly it had ended, Waver Velvet opened his eyes. Until a moment ago, he was spying over the complete turn of the scene at the Tohsaka mansion, and his vision now returned to the room he has gotten used to, on the second floor of the house of the old couple he lived with like a parasite. The image that was behind his eyelids until just then was coming from the vision of a rat familiar. That kind of magecraft is nothing spectacular for Waver. With the opening of the Heaven's Feel, the first step was obviously for Waver to start by observing the Mado and Tohsaka mansions. There is a detached villa owned by the Einsburns in the forest on the outskirts, but the Magus from the north hasn't arrived yet, so there's no reason to observe an empty place. Nothing had moved yet from both houses, and the masters were growing tired of waiting, wondering about raiding either the Tohsakas or the Matos. That was only wishful thinking to ease the observation, but they didn't expect it to actually happen.
Hey, Ryder. Here's something new. There has been one loss.
The giant, despite being called, was lying there on the floor and only responded with an HMM devoid of motivation, not even turning around. Waver was downright pissed. He had been doing nothing but rest his pained muscles all day in his room. Strictly speaking, that was someone else's room, but let's put that detail aside. But Waver couldn't settle down. Even though he had ordered him to go back to spirit form when he wasn't doing anything, Ryder had refused, saying he felt more comfortable in materialized form. And so he has been showing off his giant body all this time. Just dragging on the materialization means a large prana loss for the master to supply to his servant. That isn't too much of a problem for Waver, but in those circumstances Ryder is quite unmindful. Harder to forgive was what Ryder was doing while spending Waver's prana, which was, well, nothing, in fact. Even with Waver scornful, he was just resting, relaxed, nonchalantly picking around in a dish and watching a rental video. Can you believe that servant?
Hey, did you hear me? Assassin got done in. The heavens feel is starting.
Hey! As Waver was raising his voice with excitation, Ryder finally turned around half of his body.
Yeah, what about some assassin guy? A rat in hiding is not much of an enemy. Anyway, boy, what's amazing is that, here.
Ryder turns back to face the CTR as he speaks more heatedly. The cassette is playing an authentic account on the flight force of the world, Part 4. With a mania for military affair, Ryder has put his hand on everything related. Books, images. Of course, providing all of it is Waver's problem. Otherwise, the giant servant would walk in a library or video store, which isn't fine with the master.
There, that big black B2 thingy. It's wonderful. I'm thinking about buying 10 of those.
Just go and buy a country if you have that money.
Waver spat his answer out of frustration, and Ryder made a serious face, moaning, "Oh yeah."
Of course, funds are an important matter. Maybe I should plunder a city as rich as Persepolis. For the most urgent matters, this Clinton man is a formidable enemy. He might be a stronger enemy than King Darius.
Waver has endured stomach aches ever since he has summoned that servant. He'll have a stomach ulcer by the time they get the Grail. Shutting the giant in front of him out of his consciousness, Waver tried to think positively. At any rate, it was a good thing for Waver that Assassin was the first to fall. Waver is aware that his own servant, Ryder, with his battle abilities, is the type to go full frontal in a fight. With that in mind, an enemy who can plan out clever tricks is a bigger threat, and Assassin was pretty much the definition of that. An unknown caster servant is also a problem, but an assassin who creeps up without revealing himself was the most direct menace. The three main knight classes, Saber, Lancer, Archer, then Berserker who just riots his way, are nothing to be afraid of. Ryder's abilities and noble phantasms are enough to push them back and win. All that is left is finding out Caster's true name.
So, how was Assassin killed?
Sitting up cross-legged, Ryder threw a surprise attack at Waver with a sudden question.
Yeah?
Yeah, the servant who beat Assassin. Didn't you see him?
Waver faltered. He did see him. But just what did he see?
Must be that Tohsaka servant. I guess. Looks strong and aggressive, showing off with a lot of shiny goldy things. It took only an instant, so I'm not sure.
That's what mattered, fool.
Along with his shocked voice, something burst in the middle of Waver's eyebrows. The completely unexpected pain and the surprise make Waver fall off, then tumble flat on his face. That was Ryder's middle finger, holding it bent by the thumb, then shot forward. That's a flick on the forehead. Of course, there was no strength in that. However, when it's Ryder's finger, hard as the root of a pine tree, Waver's skin swelled red from the force. Violence again. Corporal abuse again. Waver was confused between fear and frenzy, and was at a loss for words. This is the second time he is hit by his servant. This is the second time in his whole life. Unable to breathe properly because of anger, Waver opened and closed his mouth like a fish. Ignoring how upset his master was, Ryder drew a deep, grand sigh.
You know, if I fight, it's to win and survive. What will happen if you can't observe properly?
Waver didn't reply. Ryder was right. He doesn't want to hear it from a servant who does nothing but lie down, eat tea cakes, watch videos, and read, but it's true that there are enemies who can become a problem.
Oh well, never mind. That shiny Goldie or whatever. What impression did he give you?
I told you that.
How could he have understood anything in that instant? For starters, the attack that sent Assassin into oblivion is probably a noble phantasm. Even through the eyes of the familiar, he had perceived a huge burst of prana. Yet the number of weapons that poured down on Assassin
Hey, Ryder, servants usually have just one noble phantasm, right?
Generally, yes. Sometimes. There are heroic spirits who manage to get 2 or 3. I myself, for example, am one of this case.
That's right. The night he arrived in the present world, Ryder showed Waver a noble phantasm and said it wasn't his only trump card.
There's no sense in considering the number of noble phantasms. As you must know, noble phantasms are the crystallization of the historical facts and anecdotes that made the heroic spirit famous, but that doesn't have to be a weapon. It can be a specific ability or a unique mean of attacking.
So, throwing 10 or 20 weapons at once could be a noble phantasm in itself.
A sword that splits in an infinite number, eh? That could happen. It has the potential of being one noble phantasm, yes.
Still, what defeated Assassin is yet again something different. Waver did see through the eyes of his familiar that the weapons thrown weren't all the same. That wasn't a multiplication. Those were all unique weapons. Could they have all been noble phantasms after all? That shouldn't be possible. There weren't just 1 or 2 blades flooding down on the crawling assassin.
Oh well, that's fine. We'll know when we figure out the true identity of the enemy.
Laughing heartily, Ryder slapped Waver, who was thinking deeply, on the back. The impact shook his spine and the small Mega starts choking. The blow this time wasn't humiliating, but Waver could appreciate some gentler skinship.
Are you quite done?
Good. My heart is in joy.
Ryder remarked carelessly with a daring smile.
Food and sex, sleep and war. Enjoy yourself however you want. That's the secret to a man's life.
Waver couldn't find the fun in that. Or rather, he had no experience in 2 of those.
All right, let's look for some fun outside.
Cracking the muscles in the back of his neck, the giant servant stretched largely.
We're departing for the front. Be ready.
The front? Where?
Over there, of course. Where else?
That's nuts.
Standing up and nearly reaching the ceiling, Ryder looked down at Waver's angry face and smiled.
You're not the only one who was observing the Tohsaka fort. This means Assassin's death is already known. So they'll all grow tired of looking out for an attack from the shadow, and they'll all start moving together at once. We'll find them and hunt them.
Find and hunt. Like it'll be that simple.
I am Ryder. I have predominance over the other servants going by foot, you know?
With that exaggeration, Ryder drew the sword at his waist out of its scabbard. Realizing that he was about to call out that noble phantasm, Waver stopped him confusedly.
Wait. You can't do that here. You'll blow up the house.
Sassing, that night, the expected visitor appeared at the Fuyuki Church on the hill of the Shinto suburb.
Following the Heavens Feel agreement, I, Kotomine Kirei, request the protection from the Holy Church.
To the 2 men who had arranged everything, this was a laughable farce, but they couldn't know if there wasn't still someone spying at the gate. Kotomine Isaiah feigned strictly his role of supervisor with a grave face and invited his son, weakened by his defeat as a master, inside the church. With many residents from outside, Fuyuki has a lot more people coming at the church than the other towns. Despite being in the Far East, this Church of Fuyuki is the center of the belief from Western Europe, giving it a genuine splendor. However, the resting place of ordinary Christians is nothing more than a camouflage, as the church was built in this place by the Holy Church specifically for the Heavens Feel. Being the 3rd best spiritual place, it matches the mansion of the 2nd owner of this earth, the Tohsaka family. Obviously, the father who has come here and taken over the supervision of the struggle to the death between masters and servants is a member of the Assembly of the 8th Sacrament. In other words, the priest who has been administrating the daily religious service for the ordinary Christians is no other than Kotomine Kirei. Leading Kirei through the priest's house, Father Reizi dropped his acting and nodded with a serious face.
Father, who is watching over the church, we will have tranquility then.
Sitting on the chair that was offered to him, Kirei sighed deeply. Then,
we shouldn't neglect vigilance, to be sure. There should always be someone.
He speaks with a cold-hearted, commanding tone to nobody. Of course, his words aren't addressed to his father. Father Reizi beside him doesn't see the speech of his son as strange.
Also, was anyone observing the scene?
This time, a voice responded to the question Kirei had apparently asked in an empty space, a woman. Under cover in the corner of the room, a female appeared in black clothing that seemed to boil. Neither Kirei nor Reizi raised an eyebrow to that appearance. But the appearance of the woman was that of one that shouldn't be here. Jet black robe wrapping a soft stature, a symbolic skull mask hiding her face. This costume is without a doubt that of the heroic spirit of assassination, Hasana Saba.
We are missing one.
Narrowing his eyes as if to think, Kirei looked at his father at his side.
The spirit board definitely indicated the arrival of 7 servants, didn't it, Father? I see.
Kirei would have preferred all 5 people to witness this night's farce.
Observing the mansion of each of the 3 main families should be a given for all masters participating in the Heavens Field.
The woman in a skull mask standing at his side, the one who cannot be anyone but Hassan Isaba, spoke her opinion. If the master Kotomine Kirei had lost his servant, the seals carved on his hand should have disappeared, but the 3 deep black stigmas were still carved there. In brief, the servant assassin hasn't been annihilated. Then the masked woman who is currently serving the 2 Kotomines must be the real Hassan Isaba.
Is it regrettable that the man died?
The woman shook her head with an air of indifference at Kotomine's question.
Still what?
Kirei listened intently as the woman put forth her growing protest through her humility. Of course, that was not unreasonable.
That is not vain. You can deceive the other masters by sacrificing 1 finger. They all already believe assassin has fallen. Do you not think all of you can now turn the tide of battle under cover?
The woman in black clothing bowed her head deeply. This time, thinking assassin has been removed, nobody will expect the heroic spirit of shadows to creep up behind their back. Who would know that the servant assassin was still kneeling in front of the master who had ran to the church? Even for those competing for the miracle called the Heavens Field, that was evidently a strange situation. Indeed, the name of Hassan Isaba doesn't refer to just one person. The name Hassan, that means old man of the mountain, was once the root of the word assassin, a name passed down to the head of a group of assassins in the Middle East. This means that historically there are several heroic spirits with the name of Hassan. Of course, it isn't a miracle that there was one female Hassan, but as a general rule, there can be only one assassin summoned for the Heavens Field. It is theoretically possible to have control over 2 servants by taking one from another master, but having over 2 assassins simultaneously means it is obvious a rule has been bypassed. The exaggerated voice of the dignified old priest was filled with anticipation for victory. Unable to share the enthusiasm of his father, Kirei silently gazed at a dim-lit corner of the priest's house. Act 3. Fuyuki City, Shinto. The buildings in the area planned as a business district are only 40% complete, but the maintenance of the park and shopping mall in front of the station is already done. The future plans are already done for the Shinto district to be clean and sterile, pompous and with no individuality. The city hall is also being moved piece by piece to Shinto, revived with modern iron, glass, and mortar, stealing all central municipal functions from Miyama. It is already crowded even during holidays. In the middle of the crowd going back and forth, cowering from the northern wind, Emiya Kiritsugu disappeared, colorless and odorless without attracting any attention. His shirt and coat worn for a long time and his lack of baggage give him a slacking appearance that wouldn't make you think of someone who has immigrated. As a matter of fact, he has been like that since he walked in the country up to Shinto and Fuyuki, but Japan still remains his native country. Being used to coming and going, he still felt better in this country. With a complex feeling, Kiritsugu looked down on the cigarette paper package he had just bought from a vending machine. It's been 9 years he has stopped smoking. He hasn't been able to find his favorite brand in the far land of the Einsburns, but that was mainly in regard for the mother and child. Just as he came down at the Fuyuki station prepared for battle, he had thrown a coin in the vending machine out of habit. Since he has bought a disposable lighter from a convenience store to get back the sensation, he breaks open the cigarette pack. The white of the row of filters is dazzling. He put one in his mouth and lit it. As if there wasn't a blank of 10 years, he was able to redo the movements naturally. The aroma flowing into his lungs, he got used to the taste as if he had been doing it just the day before. Kiritsugu looks at the transformed scenery, completely different from the one he vividly remembers in his heart. He visited Fuyuki in reconnaissance under cover 3 years earlier, but the face of Shinto has completely changed since then. This isn't unexpected, but this is beyond what he imagined. He needs to confirm the neighborhood again. Despite the slight difficulty from the transformation of the area, Kiritsugu reached the hotel he wanted. The lobby and the front have been arranged, but the interior is a fairly cheap business hotel. Families or wanderers, this hotel is a good harbor for quite a wide genre of users. Acting as if he knew the place, Kiritsugu walks through the lobby up to the elevator up to the 7th floor. This is where his faithful subordinate has been for 3 days, in room 73.
The Tohsaka mansion moved last night. Please watch the records of it. Also, all the equipment has arrived.
Understood. First, the situation.
Nodding, Maya switches the decoder of the unpacked television. Amongst the magecraft Kiritsugu had taught her, Maya was particularly capable in the management of regular familiars, and Kiritsugu often entrusted her with scouting or reconnaissance missions. This time again, Kiritsugu has assigned her to the surveillance of the Mato and Tohsaka mansions. The familiars Maya has pride in are bats, but unlike other magi, her bats have a miniature CCD camera tied on the abdomen. Of course, this is an idea of Kiritsugu. The illusions and camouflage-bounded fields of magi are often based on using suggestions on an observer. But that sort of things often forget about electronic-based countermeasures. Video records are also helpful for rewatching, so even considering it slows down the familiar, the joint use of cameras is a viable solution. The whole scene of the previous night is replayed on the 13-inch CTR. The blurred image is enough to understand the whole event. Without raising an eyebrow, Kiritsugu watches the servant with a skull mask, unable to escape annihilation from the golden servant. The white mask of the defeated servant is without a doubt of the assassin class.
What do you make of it?
I think it is going too well. The time lag between Assassin's materialization and the attack of Tohsaka's servant is too short. He was waiting for him. I could accept he might have detected an intruder in spirit form, but his opponent is an assassin with the presence concealment ability. I wonder if Tohsaka wasn't aware of the invasion prior to it.
Kiritsugu nodded. Having been trained by him, Maya's conclusion was the same as Kiritsugu's.
The more I think of it, the more it seems like an arrangement. Why did Tohsaka expose his servant like that if he had such a margin?
The Tohsaka family has obviously accumulated experience from the second and third Grail fights. There is no way they don't know the other masters would be observing the Tohsaka mansion. The Heavens Feel is a confrontation between heroes who have gained fame, and the legends of these heroes include a lot of information on their fighting patterns and their strong and weak points. This means it is natural that the skills and weaknesses of the heroic spirits are known from the beginning. And so, it has become an ironclad rule to hide the true identity of the heroic spirits in the war between servants. In light of this, heroic spirits are all called by their class to avoid revealing their true name. Last night, Tohsaka has left 2 clues to the other masters, being what his servant looks like, as well as showing a method that looks like a noble phantasm. Neither were enough to definitely identify the servant, but that was a risk that should have been easy to avoid. If he was to bring down Assassin, he could have done so outside of plain view.
Showing us something he didn't have to show us. That means he wanted to show it to us.
Kiritsugu nods again at Maya's conclusion.
Possibly. If there is any merit in doing that, then the explanation is obvious. Maya, what happened to the Master of Assassin?
He went to the church last night and has requested the supervisor's protection. It is the man called Kotomine Kirei.
Hearing that name, Kiritsugu's eye lit with a cold ghastliness.
Maya, send a familiar to the Fuyuki church. One will be fine for now.
Is it all right? The church is an area where aggressions between masters are prohibited.
Unless the priest supervisor doesn't find out. Stay at a reasonable distance. Don't overdo it. He doesn't have to know.
Maya frowned at Kiritsugu's incomprehensible instructions.
Must I observe the church?
You can just make it a regular patrolling. What you must concentrate on is being absolutely not discovered.
Yes, understood.
Maya couldn't understand what Kiritsugu had in mind, but didn't question him. She at once picks one of the 3 bats observing the Tohsaka mansion and sent it the thought of going to the Fuyuki church at the end of Shinto. Kiritsugu turned off the TV, then resumed inspecting the equipment. Maya prepared. That was the heresy that earned the Magus-Amiya Kiritsugu the nickname of Magus Killer. The weak point of the people called Magi was usually negligence from arrogance. They believe in their own mysteries and knowledge. They never doubt that the only threat to them beside God cannot be anything other than a magus like them. That is why, in battle, they are sensitive to nothing but traces of magecraft, to detect any kind of trivial skill. Hence they train their perception of magecraft and think of countermeasures against those skills as derisive. That's a theory no magus strays from. As a result, they ignore any attack that is purely physical and void of magecraft as secondary menace. They have no fear of the sharpest knife, the strongest bullet, until the instant they actually pierce the flesh of a magus. And before that happens, the strength of magecraft grants illusions, paralysis methods, or defensive bounded fields able to completely negate any vulgar attacks. But they despise technology. What a human who doesn't rely on magecraft can do a lot of magi cannot recognize that. The attack the enemy doesn't expect is a shortcut for all battles. Kiritsugu has reached a conclusion from a large number of battles to the death between magi. That is, magi are weak to non-magical attacks. Applying that conclusion to the circumstances of the Heavens Feel of Fuyuki, Maya has prepared a set of equipment. Among them, the rifle lying on the sheet is what gives out the strongest smell of varnish. That was a work of art that was the crystallization of the newest electronic techniques along with a ferocious shape. Despite the steady progress on miniaturization year after year of the non-magical innovations, a night vision device roughly remains at the size of a plastic bottle and is too bulky to be compared to regular optic devices. On top of the rash, compact design of the gun barrel, the enormous pair of scopes gives a clumsy air of unbalance. The total weight of the gun exceeds 10 kilos. It is already a weapon worthy for a support fire squad more than a sniping weapon. The main equipment was already hindering practical use, but that was a challenge Kiritsugu had calculated at best. When compared to Magecraft, this night vision sniping gun certainly falls behind. Magecraft can let you see better through the dark, and it is also possible to detect the position of an enemy Magus. But with this gun, Kiritsugo is able to shoot down a target without releasing any prana. In the dark, unable to detect any prana. The possibility of being hit from several hundred meters away. It is a situation a pro soldier wouldn't count as incomprehensible. But a lot of magi are really novices in such conditions. In fact, a self-conscious magus who has stepped into a world of mysteries beyond human intellect cannot relate to the stereotypes of a narrower world. Kiritsugo picked up the super heavyweight class sniper gun from the bed, checked the smoothness of the breech block and the weight of the trigger, and made sure it was in the best condition.
There is no correction up to 500 meters. Do you want to check it?
No, it's fine.
He would have wanted to not only check the alignment, but also get a grasp of the shooting, but with the constitutional government of Japan, that was unfortunately not easy. With the Grail War hostilities having already started, he might have to use the gun this very night. Kiritsugo fully trusts Maya's preparations. The other rifle that was prepared, in addition to the Walther sniping gun, is for Maya, who will be acting as a vanguard scout, a Steyr Augud salt gun. Its night vision scope has also been replaced, like Kiritsugo's, and surprisingly, the weight is under 5 kilograms. Furthermore, a Calico M950 submachine gun is ready as a reserve sidearm. The compact size is not different from a large handgun, and the reinforced plastic makes it look more like a toy than the Walther sniping gun. But the unique magazine with a system called helical allows for 50 parabellum rounds, with a firing rate of 700 shots per minute for a brutal armament. The rest includes personal hand grenades and stun grenades, smoke grenades, and C2 plastic explosive. Following the instructions Kiritsugo sent from the north, Maya had arranged to prepare the equipment without allowing any leak. But Kiritsugo's expressionless eyes don't look satisfied yet.
And the one I entrusted to you.
It is here.
I've gotten rusty.
Yes.
To Kiritsugo, murmuring in self-derision, Maya nodded without consideration. She knew the old skills of her partner. Kiritsugo pulled the bullet he had loaded in the gun, picked the other one he had dropped on the floor, and placed everything back in the case with the contender.
Ilya's body is even lighter than the wolfer here, and she's already 8 years old.
Letting free his shameful memories on his own, Kiritsugo started loosening alone. Maya's movement, barging in behind his back, stopped his train of thoughts. Agile like a snake, her hand rolled around Kiritsugo's neck, seizing the back of his head, blocking his movements and his mouth. She took his soft, dried lips, the taste and touch of a different woman from the one in his heart, breaking off the man's homesickness, but that was too quick to be forgiven.
Please only focus on what's necessary for now.
In a blurred voice that had traces of her usage of her tongue left, Maya quietly commanded Kiritsugo. Without a word, Kiritsugo felt the sensation in his chest calm down. In his heart cooling off, the pain is already vanishing away in a mist. This is the woman she is. She is the woman to whom Kiritsugo himself has raised a girl once found on a battlefield. A supporting machine whose actions are even more akin to a machine than those of the machine called Imiya Kiritsugo. This is Asa Maya, an indispensable final weapon for Kiritsugo to win this battle. That is none other than that woman. Just at the time Imiya Kiritsugo and Asa Maya were meeting in a cheap hotel of Shinto, the Volare Italia charter coming from Germany was landing on the F-lane of the airport neighboring Fuyuki City. Even under the same frozen wind of winter, the one of Japan can't be compared to the intensity of that of the Einsborn Castle. Looking up at the soft sunlight of the early afternoon, Irisfeel von Einsborn feels her heart lighten.
So, this is the country Kirituo was born in?
It is a good place. Although she could get to know the place with pictures and such, Irisfeel felt refreshed feeling the air through her body. Not only her heart lightens, coming to Japan posing as a passenger, she couldn't bring dresses for the castle, but had to bring more common clothing as much as possible to at least get to know the town. With short-heeled boots and a knee-long skirt, her movements felt as light as if she was reborn. Nonetheless, to an Einsborn who lived a secluded life, oblivious of the common sense of the outside world, the dress-up she thought would be fit of common garments was already off. Her silk blouse, her thigh-high long boots, her casual coat with silver fox fur, everything was coming straight out of a high-class display window. It was very visible that she was a rare gem from a particular birthplace with a particular tailoring. They were clothes clearly fit for a fashion model, but to Irisfeel, who grew up with polished jewelry, it seemed intimate enough. Even Irisfiel had indeed considered it a camouflage for town's areas, but it was simply impossible for a beauty such as her to disappear in the general public to begin with.
So, Saber, what did you think of the plane travel?
One step ahead down the runway, Irisfiel asks the servant with a short stature, who is leaving the lap that continues further.
Nothing in particular. It was more wearisome than expected.
There is no lie in her words. Her jade green eyes are perfectly serene.
Oh, too bad. I thought you would be more surprised and interested.
Irisfiel, you must be thinking of me as a primitive person.
To the frowning Saber, Irisfiel replied with a bright laugh void of any ill intention.
Flying in the sky is nothing surprising for a heroic spirit.
Not exactly. But as a servant summoned in the present world, I have received information about this era. Also, as a saber, I possess a skill dedicated to riding. Presently, I might be able to ride this airplane.
Hearing that, Irisfiel's eyes go round from astonishment.
You could pilot it?
Probably. My riding skill applies to all vehicles. If I can sit on a saddle and seize a bridle, I can manage the rest from instinct.
Irisfiel burst into laughter from Saber's expression. She hasn't seen the cockpit. What would she think when seeing one filled with gauges instead of her saddle and bridle?
I'm still a little disappointed. You must be the first servant ever to travel in a plane with a flesh and blood body.
I must apologize about that. I am not a good reference.
Oh, it's fine. Dash, don't worry. That isn't what I meant.
Foreign masters have to travel to Japan one way or another, but Irisfiel and her servant posing together as a party of two must be an exception. The cause was Saber. Despite being a heroic spirit, she had limits other servants didn't have. The gravest amongst these was that she could not dematerialize. She didn't have the ability to cancel her physical form to move at high speed or cut down the prana consumption from her master when at rest, something all servants should be able to do. It's not that there had been a mistake in Kiritsugu's contract, or his summoning. The soul of the hero named Artoria functioned differently from the other heroic spirits, apparently, for a reason unknown to even Irisfiel. The most problematic burden was that she was unable to turn invisible and hide her existence to the other people. There was no way she would walk under her armor suit, so Saber had to dress up as a human with a costume of the latest fashion and accompany Irisfiel. Although Irisfiel found rather welcome that Saber would follow her in convenient garments.
I am happy I could travel with you, Saber. I can't get tired of looking at you.
Irisfiel, why the change?
No. It's nothing. Don't mind that.
Hiding a smile, Irisfiel turns her head away. Saber finds that reaction suspicious.
It means you are holding something when you laugh like that. Tell me frankly what it is.
It is not a problem if you always remain in physical form, really. I get to have fun choosing your clothes like that.
How carefree, Saber wanted to reply, but sighed instead. Being unable to dematerialize is essentially a drawback that can't be dealt with for the master. Enjoying oneself isn't the primary objective, but telling the master it is no laughing matter would be mistaking the cause for the end.
Irisfiel, are these clothings fit to look around in town?
Yes, I guess. It is my first time in this country as well, so I am a little anxious.
If a third party with the common sensibility of a Japanese had happened to be present, he would have definitely been able to tell that Irisfiel was different. Irisfiel had taken Saber's measurements before their departure and issued orders to get modern clothing at a tailor of the Frankfurt airport for a dark blue dress shirt and necktie with a French continental dark suit. That was perfect to disguise her as a man. It would sound wild and foolish to dress a young woman of under 155 centimeters like that, but this is suddenly a different matter when speaking about Saber. This isn't the perverted beauty of having a beautiful woman dressed as a man. The air of Saber's cold and hard face isn't that of a feminine complexion. It was already a given that her disguising as a man was unequaled as a beautiful young man. Along with her thin stature, her face was obviously glamorous and fair-skinned, which could pass as the manly, charming air of a pure young man.
I chose the clothes to balance with my appearance. Maybe you do not like them?
Ah, not at all. This costume allows me to move freely, and I am used to posing as a man.
The necessity of slipping out of her armored clothing was obvious, but there was no denying Irisfiel had jumped straight into a dressing-up hobby more than it was required. Entrusting to the two maids who had come with them the luggages coming out from the cargo area, Irisfiel and Saber turned to the customs house with empty hands. After the two maids had sent the luggage to the Einsborn villa in the forest on the outskirts of Fuyuki City by a different route, they arranged their return to home. They were not to remain at Irisfiel's side for this heaven's feel. There's no need to put in danger people who aren't related. On that matter, Irisfiel would care for her personal belongings by herself. and the strong-hearted Saber would remain by her side. Completing without delay the procedure to enter the country, it didn't take much time until they were allowed to get to the airport lobby. But until they could reach it, every single one of the officials on the way got astounded by Irisfiel and Saber and rolled their eyes as they passed, quickly making them uneasy.
As I thought. Is there something wrong with my clothes?
Sensing the eyes of the people coming and going in the lobby, Saber mutters as if feeling awkward.
Well, it might be too elegant.
Irisfiel could only smile bitterly, but to tell the truth, she too was the center of attention. At any rate, the two of them are unequaled beauties. Their eccentric clothing, how removed from common sense they are, balances their rash match rather well. The attention from the surroundings was not just odd glances, but already envious ones.
Let's go, Saber. Worrying won't change much.
Saying so, Irisfiel pulled Saber's hand with a bitter face.
At last we are in Japan. We must enjoy ourselves as much as possible before the battle begins.
No, Irisfiel, the question isn't about enjoying.
As Saber stretched her mumbling halfway, Irisfiel walked like on springs to find a taxi. Somehow, Saber hadn't noticed until now how lively she was shining. Soon after the two arrived in Fuyuki City, sunset colored the western sky as it was quite late in the afternoon.
How lively!
As the hired car was going down the plaza of the park in front of the station, Irisfiel's impression lit her eyes as she was exposed to the traffic jam of the evening hours. But Saber by her side was studying the surroundings just like a commander investigating the topography of a battlefield.
Kiritsugo has already arrived in this place, hasn't he?
Yes, he arranged to arrive half a day before us.
Already inside the country, Kiritsugu was to hide his existence and follow a completely different route from that of Irisfiel's group. He was to take a passenger flight to the international airport at Shinosaka and change for the railroad to Fuyuki City. Saber wouldn't show any of it, but she was quite shocked by Kiritsugu and Irisfiel's plans that she didn't quite find satisfactory.
Then, what is the plan, now?
Right. For now, we shall observe the changes in the situation and adapt ourselves accordingly.
Do you mean we have nothing to do?
Exactly.
Irisfiel gave a childish smile that looked mischievous to the discouraged Saber.
But what a waste. After finally arriving to this distant country.
Smiling while watching the traffic jam around, Irisfiel strolled a little dispirited. At her side, Saber, feeling confused, firmly followed her pace.
And what about trying to find an enemy servant?
No way.
Refusing blankly, Irisfiel turned around, staring expectantly at her partner.
Say, Saber, since we have such an opportunity, we could look around the town. It must be interesting.
For an instant, Saber was taken aback by the unexpected proposition, but immediately straightened up with a stern face.
Irisfiel, we cannot be unprepared. We have to consider the land of Fuyuki we are walking in as an enemy territory already. The Heaven's Feel has already started.
Yes, I depend on you for that, Saber. If we come near a servant, can you notice it?
Well, that is correct. In my case, I am able to perceive a presence in a radius of up to roughly 200 meters. Also, an opponent with the proper ability could tamper with that.
I see, but right here and right now, there is no servant targeting us, is there?
Indeed.
But more than being based on a coherent plan, Saber sensed that Irisfiel had a hidden motive. Actually, Saber could only see Irisfiel's invitation as a mere sightseeing jaunt.
Irisfiel, we really should establish somewhere and reunite with Kiritsugu to work out a plan. Hasn't the Einsburn family prepared a castle on the outskirts of the town?
Well, yes, we have that.
It was Irisfiel's turn to start mumbling. Apparently she was conscious that her behavior wasn't fit for a situation of crisis. Guessing there was a reason, Saber asked again.
Why do you insist so much on visiting this town?
You know, this is my first time.
A little nervous, Irisfiel looked down as she replied. Saber sighed from the shock.
Dash, as you know, by being taken over by the Grail, I have knowledge of this world. Of course I also know about this land that will become a battlefield. Irisfiel, this town isn't really a place for sightseeing, especially since there are no particularly famous places.
No, that isn't it. That is not what this is the first time I have gone out.
As I say, like a rebirth, this is the first time I have walked in the outside world. Then ever since you were born, you have stayed in that castle all your life?
Not liking the conclusion, Irisfiel hung her head in shame, giving a small nod.
I am a puppet created only for this Heaven's Feel. The Elder has always told me I had no need to go out.
Saber didn't really have a life full of joy as Artoria either. but she couldn't avoid feeling compassion toward this person who had been like a bird in cage, imprisoned in that frozen castle ever since she was born.
Of course, it's not like I don't know anything, right? Especially since Kiritsugu came. He taught me a lot of the scenery and the happenings with movies or pictures. About New York, Paris, and all the people in the world. About Japan, too, of course.
Smiling miserably, Irisfield looked at the traffic jam around.
But this is the first time I have seen this world with my own eyes. So, maybe I am being a little too happy and merry. I'm sorry.
Saber nodded, quietly turning her eyes, and gently offered her arm wrapped in her dark suit to Irisfield.
Saber?
This is my first time walking in this town, but escort is also the duty of a knight, so I will do my best. Then, if you please.
Thank you.
Her eyes lit with a bright joy. Irisfield entwines her arm around Saber's elbow. There must be a lot of time left before the night. Saber and Irisfield easily drew all the attention in the middle of the business district. The young woman was full of dignity, with her glittering silver hair and cashmere coat, by no means pompous but definitely nicely fitting, walking with a good-looking young man with a brilliant face, holding her arm. That wasn't a combination you'd see anywhere except outside of a cocktail party filled with movie stars. Those visions coming straight from the silver screen are now leisurely striding through the road of a Japanese provincial city. Anyone walking down the road would stop to look and forget walking for an instant. The two didn't have the harmony of a couple at a date, nor the admiration of people just sightseeing, only following the flow of their journey, walking aimlessly. Sometimes they would suddenly stop to happily gaze at the setting sun shining in the windows of the buildings and the show windows, nothing special. They wouldn't enter any shop to make any expense nor sit at a cafe terrace to rest. Like two understanding outsiders, they would simply slip in the noisy surroundings, watching over the working life of the city from a fixed distance. Unnoticed, the winter sun had completely sunk behind the mountain range, leaving the curtain of night to reveal a different face of the urban area. Irisfield sighed, entranced by the colorful illuminations of the twinkling scenery. The world is probably full of towns with a more beautiful night view than that of this Fuyuki city. But Irisfield was deeply moved by the night before her eyes, as if putting her hands on a treasure for the first time.
It's really beautiful. The life of people alone makes the night dazzling.
Irisfield's murmur showed her emotion, to which Saber silently nodded. The political world she once lived in was now in a distant space-time from this place, but no emotion sprang from this scene she saw for the first time. Yet, the tranquility was only on the surface, as inside, her nerves were like a needle. This place is already in enemy territory. This knowledge remained unchanged. Even so, without reproving Irisfield, she complied to her hope of fully enjoying herself freely for a brief time. The reason is her unwavering confidence in her sword. She is the heroic spirit summoned as the strongest class of the Grail of Fuyuki, the position of swordsman. There is no servant that surpasses her in close combat. She is certain that she can clear an escape route from the battlefield under any disadvantageous situation. Actually, a surprise attack is what she desires. To withstand it fair and square, turn the table and go for the kill. If anyone is enough of a fool to plan on making her their enemy, she may remind them that the Saber class is not about gallantry.
Hey, Saber. Do you want to see the beach next?
As Irisfield was unable to hide her excitement, the young woman disguised as a man nodded with a smile. Her tension wasn't picking any opponent. She had sworn she would protect Irisfield, so she would protect her to the end as she was enjoying herself. That was the strength of her high pride as a knight. There was a vast seaside park on the opposite shore of the big bridge that crossed the Mian River. Late at night, two persons were strolling on the lone walkway with nobody around anymore. The north wind from the sea was blowing softly uninterrupted, blowing up Irisfield's long silver hair like the trail of a shooting star. In this place, couples dating hate the chill of winter nights and would only come in summer. But Irisfield, who was seeing the sea for the first time, didn't care about the cold as she had grown accustomed to it back at her home place.
We should have come here when it wasn't dark.
Simply looking at the sea at night, filling the bleak darkness, Saber said so in an apologetic tone. But Irisfield was unconcerned, concentrating on the horizon that had sunk in the dark.
It's fine. The sea at night is beautiful too. It mirrors the night sky.
Listening to the endless roar of the waves, Irisfield's smile was all over her face. As she had greatly enjoyed today's walk, her fair-skinned cheeks were flushed. She looked more like a young woman of tender years rather than a married woman with a child, with her innocent and naive smile.
I really had no idea that walking through an unknown town as a couple with a gentleman would be such an enjoyable experience.
Was my imitation of a gentleman satisfying?
As Irisfield rejoiced, Saber banter with her with a sarcastic tone, unusual from the stubborn Rowoic spirit.
Plentifully, it was faultless. Saber, today, you were a superb knight.
You honor me, princess.
The young woman in the dark suit bowed courteously in front of her. Irisfield felt a little embarrassed, turning her head toward the sea.
Saber, do you like the sea?
In my time, in my country, what was beyond the sea was always the enemy. It was annoying and not very attractive.
I see.
At Saber's reply, Irisfield's expression becomes a little clouded.
It is tough to forgive. You are a woman like me. For you who lived as King Arthur, dating gentlemen was not a suitable thing to enjoy.
Well, yes, that it was.
Saber shrugged her shoulders, smiling nonchalantly. She had no regret from casting aside her womanhood. Instead, her small chest was filled with the pride of leading through the battlefield.
But you, Irisfield, would you not want to walk through the city with Kiritsugu rather than with me?
This time, it was Irisfield's face that was crossed by a smile.
He cannot do that. He would be pained with mixed feelings.
Not grasping the meaning of her reply, Saber makes a dubious face.
Can Kiritsugu not enjoy his time spent with you?
Not that. He would certainly enjoy it as much as I do. That's why he can't. He is one for whom happiness is a pain.
Carefully analyzing these words, Saber tries to comprehend the contradiction in the man named Emiya Kiritsugu.
Dash, he is a man who cannot value his happiness. Is that the weakness he bears?
Maybe so. That man is always punishing himself deep inside. If he wants to keep chasing his dream, he has to be cold-hearted.
With a distant gaze, Irisfield looks at the sea, thinking of her husband who is hiding somewhere in the city, preparing for the same goal. Saber reflected for a moment upon those words. Today the discussion has moved on an unexpected topic after the sea, even though they had intended the day to end on a pleasant mood. Nonchalantly, Saber held and pulled Irisfield's upper arm. Just by this gesture, Irisfield settled down and exchanged a look with Saber.
An enemy servant?
Yes.
The sensation didn't change. From under cover 100 meters on the side, he is leaving plain indications like a provocation. He is clearly conscious of Saber's presence, yet doesn't shorten the distance, rather slowly distancing himself.
He seems to be inviting us.
That is honest. Does he want to choose the battlefield?
Without a trace of tension in her voice, Irisfield still kept cool as she replied. In this battle situation, that is the proof of her complete faith in Saber. This made Saber revise her inner judgment in favor of her mistress.
It appears the opponent has the same expectations as us, making the opponent bite on the indications left for show. He is a servant looking for a frontal fight, just like you, Saber, isn't he?
That would be a lancer or a rider class. He makes a straightforward opponent.
At Saber nodding, Irisfield again returns a fearless smile.
Then, shall we take on the invitation?
I wish the same.
It is dangerous to blindly take the bait and follow the enemy to a field at his advantage. But Saber isn't the frail type to fear such tricks, and her mistress doesn't underestimate her servant either. The marks of the enemy were getting more distant, and Saber started walking with a quiet self-confidence. Irisfield, following likewise, turned on the switch of a palm-sized device hidden in her pocket. This is a transmission machine entrusted by Kiritsugu, a device for him to follow the position of Irisfield's group from a different route. It is a mechanized gadget that works without prana that Kiritsugu intentionally chose. Irisfield trusted Saber's power. Any enemy of a rank lower than Saber that they would meet shall be killed in a blink of the eye with one sword strike by her proud servant. That was the easy development she was expecting. Yes, as much as possible. She wanted her knight to end the fight before Kiritsugu entered the battle. The broad bridge straddling the widening Mion River spans majestically over 665 meters, arching with the diameter of over 3 roads. The top of the arch is over 50 meters high. Anyone standing so high and receiving the full force of the sea wind would miss a step and fall to his end into the river below, unable to go back up without great skills and a lifeline. Atop that cold steel frame, Waver Velvet had nothing like a lifeline, clinging with only both arms and legs. Thus, of course, he was giving up the dignity and composure he usually always had. Right next to him, his servant rider is sitting cross-legged with his odious dignity.
Rick. Let's go down. Now!
With his teeth continuously clicking from the cold and terror, Waver's complaining voice was like the blowing wind to the giant servant.
This place is perfect for a lookout. Well, this isn't the time for fancy sightseeing in a high place.
With a wine bottle in his hand, sipping from time to time, he rambled while looking down at the west bank of the bridge toward the wide seaside park hidden from the estuary. Waver can't see it, but what Ryder was looking at were the marks a servant has been leaving around for 4 hours. Ryder had been wandering in the streets looking for a contact with the enemy, but he noticed that servant only late in the afternoon. While thinking whether he should rush down on him immediately, Ryder has kept observing him from a distance without moving onward. When Waver asked about it, Ryder answered with a snort.
He's clearly luring us out. For him to not pick up on us, that's strange. And it's not just me anymore. Other servants must be studying his aspect. An impatient master would just get tired of waiting at some point, or something. That's what we should be looking forward to.
Ryder's plan had no opening that Waver could see. Rather, it was unexpected. This broad-minded giant servant could actually set up sly tactics. Indeed, as Ryder said, only a helpless fool would take the bait and accept the challenge. Those falling for it would only be eating each other and decrease the count. However self-confident a so provocative servant is, anyone other than Ryder going for a brawl would be good riddance. Whoever gets defeated, Ryder can smash the winner. There is definitely a profit in the fight of others. So, after it is decided so, it becomes a matter of endurance. Remaining at a fixed distance from the traces of the servant wandering aimlessly in the city, Waver and Ryder followed and were still surveying. Nonetheless, there are obvious reasons behind taking a high point of view, but there are limits. Never mind servants, Waver with his flesh and blood body would definitely die if he falls. It shouldn't be possible to ignore that, so how come this giant cares so little about Waver's safety?
Come down, no. Get the hell down. I've had it.
Just wait. You're a restless guy. Sitting and waiting is also part of the battle.
Sipping in his wine bottle, Ryder didn't even look at Waver's half-crying face when answering so gratuitously. High places are dangerous. Such common sense hasn't been acknowledged for yet between the two.
If you're bored, read the book I entrusted to you. It's a good book.
Hearing that, Waver remembered about the stupid weight in the knapsack hanging on his shoulder. In this situation where they shouldn't afford even one unnecessary gram, the poetry anthology with its thick hard cover really is a dead weight. That was the one book Ryder looted from the library he raided right when he arrived in the present world. The Iliad written by the poet Homer in ancient Greece. The epic poem describing the Trojan War, in which fought gods and humans jumbled together. The Atlas can be okay. Exaggerating about world conquest, Ryder takes interest in the geography of the modern world, even if it sounds foolish. But what's with a poetry anthology? Ryder set up a library at home even though he was preparing for war, and yet he still insisted in bringing the Iliad with him. Naturally, if he wants to bring anything that isn't his regular equipment, he would need to remain materialized. If he needs to dematerialize to hide from the other people, then after all, it's Waver who ends up having to carry the luggage. Certainly, Ryder insisted that the book was preparation for war. But how on earth can a book that isn't even about war strategy be helpful on the battlefield?
Ryder, why did you bring this book?
At Waver's bitter question, the heroic spirit answered with a grave expression.
The Iliad is very profound. At the height of battle, I would suddenly get the urge to read a verse of poetry. At a time like that, I feel bad when I can't reread something immediately.
He feels like his interlocutor just gave him a bullshit answer, but fear stops him from arguing back.
At a time like that, you mean in battle?
Yes.
Ryder nods nonchalantly as if his reply was perfectly normal.
But how?
With my left hand, when I hold my sword in my right hand. If I need to hold the bridle with my left hand, I get a page to read it aloud.
Waver felt at loss for words at the unimaginable answer.
It isn't that surprising. The warriors of my era all lived a life of battle. Battling while drinking and eating, embracing women while battling even while sleeping. Anyone can do that.
Just ask him and he won't stop. This man does seem like he could do all that, but…
You're kidding, right?
Of course, you fool.
He sniggered and gave an exploding flinch on Waver's forehead.
Yeah!
He didn't have the time to worry, let alone dodge. At any rate, there he was, clinging on the steel frame with all his might with both arms and legs. Waver couldn't even rub his pained forehead, as he could only howl with an unbecoming shriek.
Hey kid, anyone would laugh at a joke like that? When your face turns blue like that, it's because you have no guts.
Ignoring Ryder's frank laugh, the Magus strongly regretted choosing this heroic spirit as he shed tears from the pain on his forehead.
I want to go back. Go back to England.
I told you not to rush like that. Here, things are moving up at last.
Yeah?
Ryder points at the seaside park with a stern chin.
Even I, the king of conquerors, noticed only just now. But, yes, it seems there was one more servant in this park. This guy isn't hiding anything either. On the contrary, he's nearing the other one who arrived after us.
Then,
The two seem to be going toward the port. That's a provocation. That's it. We'll study their fight.
Before one knows, his eyes start to hold the sharp gleam of a beast as he gave a threatening laugh. He was yet only a spectator, but the soul of the heroic spirit Alexander was already on the battlefield. In Waver's heart, unable to move on the steel frame, Waver's misery was winning over the sense of reliability he should have from Ryder. Moreover, he was mostly thinking that nothing mattered if he were to fall down anyway.
How nice of you to come. All of those who are parading around today in the town have only cowered away. You are the only one of valor who answered my invitation.
With a humble, cheerful, praising voice, the heroic spirit Lancer asked Saber carelessly, without standing on guard.
That pure fighting spirit? Am I correct in thinking you are Saber?
You are. Surely you must be Lancer.
Indeed. -H, him. It is unusual to exchange names with the opponent in a deadly fight. That was a pleasure that is not obligatory.
In agreement, Saber loosens her feigned impudence a little.
Certainly it isn't. Our battle isn't one for honor to begin with. You yourself are raising your spear for your master of this era, are you not?
Correct.
With a strange expression, Lancer answered in a cool, bitter tone, not reminding of someone who wished a deadly exchange. Looking more closely, he is a remarkably handsome and beautiful man. His intrepid features are a high bridge of the nose and a valiant eyebrow. Despite his hard-cut mouth denoting a stoic air, his eyes seem to hide a quiet grief, yet a strong, manly scent rises from him. Below his left eye, he has a beauty spot like a grain of tear. That gives his gaze an even more impressive brilliance. Truly, his features were those that could sweep a woman's heart at a glance. No, actually. Does his elegant air of beauty only come from his features? Holding back behind Saber, Irisfeel shortened her breathing a little as she frowned.
A charm magecraft. It is impolite to use on a married woman, spearman.
Clearly, Lancer was emitting a spiritual power that could marvel a woman. As Irisfeel's body is a homunculus, it is specialized in the usage of magecraft, and her magic resistance is higher than normal, but an average woman would be enslaved by this man at a glance. Lancer shrugged with a bitter smile at Irisfeel's remark.
Sorry, that's some sort of a curse I've had since I was born. This is all you will get. Blame my birth or your womanhood.
An example of a charm curse is a mystic eye, but the only one Lancer has been looking straight at since the beginning is Saber. He hasn't looked at Irisfeel behind her. The charm probably activated as soon as Irisfeel looked at his face. That would make it a mystic face instead of a mystic eye. Chuckling, Saber observed Lancer.
You were not expecting my sword to grow dull with that fine look. Were you, spear user?
That would be such a killjoy, but indeed, the anti-magic ability of the Saber class is not vain. Excellent. It wouldn't suit my reputation to murder a woman weakened by my only face. I am glad my first opponent has such backbone.
Oh, you were wishing for a fair fight. It is my honor to face such a proud, heroic spirit.
Exaggerating, Saber replied with a quiet smile. It was a smile that is only for those who wish for a perfectly straightforward life and death exchange.
Then any time.
Picking up the long spear on his right shoulder by spinning it once, Lancer raised the tip of the short spear in his left hand. His stance, spreading both spears like wings, really was an unreadable style. Saber's fighting spirit boiled as well and exploded. The prana surge enveloped the girl's slender dark suit in a swirl like a tornado. In the next instant, her body was wrapped in a silver and azure armor. The armor and gauntlets created as by magic was the true form of the beautiful King of Knights. As a heroic spirit,
Saber.
swallowing nervously, Irisfeel called from behind. She could feel the fighting spirit released by both servants, as well as the atmosphere strained by that tension. There was no room to disrupt this battle, and yet she couldn't just stand and watch. She was only a substitute master for Saber.
Take care. I can support you with healing magecraft, but no more.
Without a word, Saber nodded.
Leave Lancer to me, but it worries me that the enemy master is nowhere to be seen. He might be preparing an odd trick. Please be cautious. Irisfeel, I entrust you to watch my back.
Her jade eyes spoke calmly, fearlessly. Trust the heroic spirit of the sword. As the one this heroic spirit recognized as her master, trust yourself likewise, Irisfeel. Said, her eyes.
Understood. Saber, bring me victory.
Yes, I will.
Nodding resolutely, Saber takes a step forward, toward the space of the long spear where Lancer was standing on guard. After receiving the signal sent by Irisfeel, Emiya Kiritsugo and his Aomaya raced towards the factories according to its direction. They were welcomed by a soundless stretch of silence. There was only the howling of the sea wind by their ears and an atmosphere as quiet and stagnant as death. The night was so serene. However,
It has already begun.
just by the traces of prana from the surroundings, Kiritsugu was able to accurately judge the situation. Someone had formed a barrier. It should be the work of the enemy servant's master. The goal was to segregate ordinary humans from the heavens field, concealing the true battlefield of the war. It is a compulsory rule for magi to prevent their activities from being exposed to other mortals. Kiritsugu began to contemplate as he held the 10 or so kilograms heavy sniper rifle. He had already estimated Iris Field's position according to the transmitter. However, questions remain as to how to approach the location and where to observe once they reach it. He did not think about joining the battle at all. That was why he brought the sniper rifle along. He wanted to inspect the battle at a suitable place, attacking with the rifle only when needed. Servants are not humans, thus only a servant can wound another servant. No matter how powerful Kiritsugu and Maya's firearms are, they would not work on servants. It was Saber's job to battle the opposing servant. As long as the enemy can devote himself to the battle and does not pay attention to the well-being of his master, then it is possible to win this fight.
Up there, that looks like that's a good place to observe the fight.
Maya pointed in front of them as she spoke. It is a derrick crane that towered high into the night. Judging by sight, the control cabin hovered about 30 meters above the ground. It would be the best observation point possible if one can contrive to silently climb up there. Kiritsugu had no objections to Maya's suggestion, but because of that, he shook his head.
Yes, that is the ideal place to survey the battle. So it shouldn't be only us that came up with the idea.
Without further explanations on Kiritsugu's part, Maya had already understood his intentions.
Maya, slip in through the eastern bank. I'll go through the west. Find an observation point that can overlook both Saber's battle and the crane.
I understand.
Maya disappeared in the shadows of the factories with a jog, holding the AOG assault gun in her hands. Kiritsugu checked the input from the transmitter as he cautiously moved in the opposite direction. At the same time, Saber was experiencing a similar wonder. Slaughter at war was truly a piece of cake for her. As a knight that braved her life through countless battles, she fought with her enemies as smoothly as she would yield a knife and a fork. In her comprehension, a spear should be a weapon that is wielded with both hands. It is common knowledge. So she thought that for Lancer, using 2 spears is just a means to confuse the enemy. As the heroic spirit of the lance, the spear in his hand should be his noble phantasm. Whereas, revealing the true name of the noble phantasm in the heavens field equates to exposing one's true identity. Therefore, the amulets bound onto Lancer's spears must be for the purpose of concealing the spear's real name. Looks like his master and him were very prudent on the matter of hiding identities. If that was the case, it would not be hard to explain why he was using 2 spears. Because Saber does not know which spear is the true noble phantasm, she had to fend off the attacks made by both of them. Even so, the long spear on the right, the short spear on the left, one of them must be Lancer's true weapon. Between one's habitual weapon and the weapon used to dazzle the enemy, feint and solid moves can be distinguished, so Saber paid close attention to each of his attacks. She believed that if she can recognize the true lance, her chances of winning would be improved immensely. Yet, her own attack was deflected for the 3rd time. Saber had to step back to wait for a better opportunity.
What's wrong, Saber? Your attacks are not really working.
The 2 heroic spirits devoted their entire selves to the fight, sparing no thoughts to the world surrounding them. No, even if they had stayed on guard, in their current state they might still be oblivious to the fact that someone was slipping into the terrain. The reason was that, not only is the newcomer a considerable distance from the sparks flying off the deadly dance of blade and spear, he moved soundlessly in the shadows, and also had the ability of presence concealment that can bypass a servant's detection. A gust of wind from the sea fluttered the black robe. The sliver of a satisfactory smile emerged on the countenance beneath the white skull mask. No one could have thought that the servant assassin, eliminated in front of many witnesses last night, now stood in the evening shopping street. Assassin hid in the perfect spot to observe the straightforward battle, the crane that loomed beside the cliff. The location was about 500 meters away from the site of the skirmish. As a servant with eyesight surpassing that of a human, he could clearly discern the two's conflict, even spotting their expressions with accuracy. Meanwhile, the 2 combatants barely had time to consider if they were being spied upon. He could have remained in spiritual form and obtained information from a much closer distance. But while he is in spiritual form, his senses would have turned it into spiritual detection. And the job that his master gave him tonight was to observe with your eyes. Assassin, who understood his master's intentions, silently gazed at the battle in the distance according to his order, 15 kilometers away from the warehouse area where the deadly struggle continued. Someone was sitting in the darkness within the basement of the Fuyuki church, encased by the silence of the night. While his eyes were closed, he was not resting but sitting in silence with his nerves on edge. The jet-black figure was Kotomine Kirei's priest's frock. From his profile, one might think that he was contemplating about certain matters. Who would have thought that he was listening to the crooning of the sea breeze and seeing before his eyes a battle scene full of the sparks from the clashing of steel? What he was seeing and hearing was an unknown battle between servants taking place in the distant warehouses, the contents identical to those seen by his servant assassin. He was using the result of his past 3 years of study, an ability called shared perception that was taught to him by Tohsaka Tokiomi. Using only a prana connection, he was able to share senses with the one that made a contract with him. In the heavens feel, the ability to completely monitor a servant's actions from long distance is very useful. If one's servant is assassin, who is especially skilled in reconnaissance, then the ability is peerless. The only difficulty lies in that if the contractor does not agree to it, the ability cannot be used. For Tokiomi, who taught this magecraft to Kirei himself, his suggestions were immediately rejected by Archer. For the haughty king of heroes, even if it were his master, to allow another to look through his eyes seems highly unlikely. Therefore, the only ones who can achieve this are Kirei and Assassin.
Something is happening around the warehouses beside the estuary of the Mion River. It appears that the initial battle has begun.
Kirei spoke, but there is no one in the darkness. Instead, there was an aged phonograph upon a table, its brass horn tilted towards Kirei. As was expected, the ordinary antique phonograph replied to his words in a human voice.
Not the initial. Officially, it is the second battle, Kirei.
It appears to be a battle between Saber and Lancer. The level of Saber's abilities is extremely high, mostly likely with the majority of parameters near A rank.
I see. No wonder it is the strongest class. Can you see the master?
I can only see one more person, a silver-haired woman standing behind Saber.
Seems that Lancer's master knows he should conceal himself. Not an amateur, he understands the rule of this heaven's field. Wait, did you say Saber's master is a silver-haired woman?
Yes, a young Caucasian girl, silver-haired with red eyes. Doesn't look quite human.
The other side of the brass horn seemed to be silently contemplating.
An Einsburn homunculus. Could it be that they are still making homunculus masters? Though it is not impossible.
Are you saying this woman is the master of the Einsburns?
So Jupiter's pawns are not just limited to Emiya Kiritsugo. It's hard to believe that I actually predicted it wrong.
For the first time in his life, a curious agitation surged up in Kirei's chest. Within moments, he realized that it was actually the emotion named disappointment.
All in all, that woman is the key to grasping the flow of the heavens feel. Kirei, you must pay close attention.
I understand. I'll send someone to follow her at all times.
Immediately after receiving those mysterious words, Kirei continued to watch the two heroic spirits intently. But be it the sparkling collision of blades or the leaping prana bursts, in Kirei's eyes they were no longer as bright as they seemed moments ago. Kiritsugu silently set up the Walther on the mountain as shipping containers piled on the container port beside the seaside cliffs. He took in the situation of the fight using the electronic sights that penetrated the cover of night. Firstly, the thermographic scope. He spotted it. On the screen that displayed cool shades of black and blue, red and orange images emerged conspicuously. The heat diagram representing the two of them fused together as if it was a giant flare. Further in the distance, two smaller heat patterns appeared. One of them was standing in the middle of the street witnessing this battle. The other was concealed on the warehouse roofs of a remoter locale. It was very easy to decide which one of them was to be the target of assassination. It was indeed Iris Veal who stood on the road. She was almost stating that, as the partner of an excellent saber, she should not hide away but fight a fair battle bravely and in the open. Then the heat signature on the roof would be the enemy master, the one controlling Lancer, who was facing Kiritsugu's saber with dual spears. Submerged in the darkness, Kiritsugu donned a cold-hearted smile. It was the best starting condition he could hope for. Lancer's master probably relied on illusions or such presence-concealing magecraft to hide his position and thought it enough. He did not consider that this would be countered with mechanical cameras. Like all other magi who died by Kiritsugu's hand, he would walk the same road as them to his destruction. Kiritsugu contacted Maya, positioned on the other side of the battlefield, with his radio.
Maya, Lancer's master is hiding on top of the warehouses, northeast to where Saber is. Can you see him?
No. From my position, it's a blind spot.
If possible, Kiritsugu wanted to cooperate with Maya to ensure the accuracy of the attack with a crossfire. Unfortunately, only Kiritsugu himself can fire at the moment. But it would not be a problem as it was a distance of barely 300 meters. Kiritsugu's skills would have taken his target's life with just one bullet. As long as he remains unaware of the presence of the sniper, no Magus can defend himself from a 30-30 the Winchester Magnum round. Setting up the bipod, Kiritsugu had just started to get into the mood. Suddenly, with a start, he turned the Walther towards the derrick crane. In that moment, he felt that all his plans were ruined. Keeping his disapproval inside his heart, he whispered into the radio again.
Maya, up on the crane.
Yes, affirmative here as well. It's just like what you thought.
Maya, you keep an eye on Assassin. I'll observe Lancer.
Understood.
Kiritsugu sighed soundlessly, lowered the bipod of the Walther, and continued to calmly observe the scene within the scope. Since he had decided to abandon this opportunity, Saber's effort tonight was as good as wasted. If she could restrain from showing her noble phantasm or to escape immediately with Irisfeel, then he would have to extend his thanks to her. But she was a haughty and proud heroic spirit, and those possibilities were only his conjectures. However, it would not be a bad idea to see just once how capable his subordinate actually is.
That will depend on you, my lovely King of Knights.
The confrontation between Saber and Lancer was still more like a competition. Rather, as each was measuring the other's power thoroughly in a preliminary test, it had started to look like a display of strength. In the middle of that disaster, still without a single scratch, Saber and Lancer are glaring at each other, preparing their next move. Neither showed any sign of exhaustion.
There's no honor in battling unannounced, but
Lancer starts speaking with Saber, a killing intent flowing into the tip of both of his spears, only his gaze keeping its freshness.
That's unnecessary modesty, Lancer.
Holding her invisible sword, Saber put a smile on her lips once more.
Although I do not know your name, your spear play, and your compliments. You honor me. I am thankful of that.
Both had pride in their trained skills and strength, and meeting an equal opponent, they freely pay respect to each other. They both have the pride of a warrior hidden in their heart. The two heroic spirits understood that much. But
It's called... Enough of this playtime.
both Saber and Irisfeel are surprised by the cold voice resounding out of nowhere.
Lancer's master?
Stiffening, Irisfeel took a look around her, but there was no human form to be seen. With the unnatural echo of the voice, she couldn't make out whether it was a man's or a woman's, or where it came from. Perhaps there was a camouflage like an illusion. The enemy doesn't seem to be close to showing up in front of Irisfeel any time.
Don't drag the fight anymore. This Saber is a formidable enemy. Make it quick. Dash, you may unveil your noble phantasm.
Saber's face stiffens at the words of the unseen Magus. Noble phantasm. He is urging his servant to bear his fangs seriously.
understood, my master.
Contrary to what he had showed of his character up to now, Lancer dropped his voice quietly and changed his weapon's grip. Without hesitation, he dropped the short spear in his left hand at his feet.
Then, is it that long spear?
In front of Saber, Lancer peeled off the amulet tightly bound around the long spear in his right hand. It was a deep crimson spear. Totally different from before, prana starts rising from the tip of the spear like an ominous mirage.
Dash, that's about it. From here on, I'm out to do you in.
Lancer muttered with a low voice, changing his stance to hold with both hands his lethal weapon finally exposed. Saber as well lowered her sword, measuring the distance between her and Lancer with greater caution. Exposing one's noble phantasm can have two different kinds of effects. One type is the demonstration of the large power of one's deadliest move as they announce its true name. Take Saber's ultimate secret move. She has Excalibur, the sword of promised victory, currently protected behind a bounded field of invisibility. But if she throws away the camouflage and shouts its true name, her sacred sword would shoot a stream of light that can mow down 1,000 soldiers. As it truly is an anti-fortress noble phantasm that can turn the ground into scorched earth, it cannot be used just like that but as a last step. Along with that, there can also be how the weapon already carries the nature of a noble phantasm. In Saber's case, her invisible air barrier of the Wind King is an example. That alone doesn't have the capacity to annihilate the enemy. It is more a noble phantasm suitable in battle as a sharp tool. It isn't particularly used for strength, but to put it differently, it is easier to use in a trump card that can bring victory if used well. And so, Lancer's red spear is probably the latter. So said Saber's intuition. Lancer will keep exchanging continuous blows with Saber. She doesn't suspect the next strike to be decisive for the fight. The two close the distance by sliding their feet, silently but with the tension doubling. Dash Lancer made the first move. Compared to the acrobatic freedom of his spear up to now, this was a much simpler stab in a straight line. A stabbing thrust that was guessing the length of Saber's blade hidden under invisible air, or rather, renouncing to watch out for it. As a natural reaction, Saber repelled Lancer's spear with the arm that held the sword, ignoring the pain. Really, that was neither too serious nor sharp, just a common strike. But the disaster came like a squall. Between the entangled spear and sword, an abrupt, unexpected gale rolled in and blew around.
Whoa.
Letting out a shocked voice, Saber took 3 steps away from Lancer's spear. Lancer calmly resumed his stance without chasing her. Watching over the scene, Irisfield can't understand just what is happening. The gust of wind just now lasted only an instant, but it wasn't particularly gushing out prana. The origin of that wind was an enigma, but that definitely wasn't a threat from Lancer. Nevertheless, Saber was the only one who was shocked, Lancer smiling boldly at her astonishment.
I exposed it. Your precious sword.
Silent, Saber didn't comprehend Lancer's victorious mutter. They both understand the reason behind this mysterious phenomenon. The wind had come from Saber's sword. More specifically, that was invisible air's doing. The bounded field of condensed pressure that could refract light had leaked out in just an instant. The instant it had clashed with Lancer's spear, the prana controlling the wind around the sword had become loose. And at that moment, Lancer had caught a glimpse of the shape of the true sword inside the torn, bounded field. Lancer's murmur from before was the proof that it was definitely his spear that had exposed invisible air.
I got the length of your blade. You won't get me with that invisible interval again.
Whether it was exaggeration or not, Lancer started flinging thrusts. Just as he had said, the spear strike suddenly gained in vigor, the attacks more severe and not vain anymore. Having certified the distance Saber's blade could go, he made no mistake in his aiming. Letting just one thrust pass meant a fatal wound. Understanding that much, Saber kept moving her body and parried every single spear strike with her blade. Flickering. There showed the afterimage of the shape of her golden sword.
Say.
There was still pressure coming out of invisible air, but it was a continuous random gale violently blowing Saber's blonde hair in waves. There was no doubt left. Lancer's red spear is draining invisible air. Each time it comes with the tip of the spear, the golden blade is showing like a stroboscope. But with that spear, there's still way. Saber encouraged herself. Using a spear with both hands, that is a style Saber can deal with. In the middle of the uninterrupted series of strikes, Saber looked for just one attack with a weak aiming. With just that, she can twist her body instead of parrying and rely on the hardness of her armor. A well-placed counter in a near-death situation can be a perfect opportunity. In a swift movement, Saber struck at Lancer's shoulder. She ignored the tip of the red spear grazing her flank. It should be superficial on her armor. And meanwhile, she will be splitting her enemy from the shoulder. Saber foresaw the pain, her intuition saving her from a lost cause. Her sword dropping in mid-air, Saber turned over and threw herself on the side. It was hard to say if it had been a close call. Lancer's howling spear definitely seemed to have spilled blood. There's no need to say whose blood it is. Rolling on the ground, Saber escaped from Lancer pursuing her and stood up immediately to keep track of her opponent. Her eyes betrayed her pain.
Saber.
Seeing that something had happened, Irisfield started sending out prana to heal Saber's flank.
Dash. Thank you, Irisfield. I'm fine. The healing is working.
Even saying so, Saber is still holding her side, as if there were still traces of pain left.
It does seem like victory will not be gained that easily.
Muttering, Lancer didn't seem too discouraged and rather spoke with an amused voice. Visibly, this man greatly enjoyed competing against a formidable enemy. Grinding her teeth, Saber calmly assembled the puzzle in her mind, and the series of hardly believable circumstances pieced themselves together. Her armor should have blocked Lancer's spear. Nevertheless, the tip of the spear had Saber's blood on it. And right now, Saber's armor is the same as ever, without a scratch. To make a practical guess, just with the spear coming in contact, the blade passed through the armor as if it had vanished. Saber cannot dematerialize, but she can materialize her battle outfit and then cancel it. In other words, Saber's armor is knit out of prana, and it is not material in the present reality like the clothes that Irisfield bought. Furthermore, it was incomprehensible that invisible air could be cracked. The contact with Lancer's spear had created a fissure in the bounded field that generated the wind.
I see. I figured out the mystery of your spear, Lancer.
Saber murmured with a low voice. She reflected once more upon the toughness of her formidable enemy. That red spear can cut off prana. Nevertheless, it's not so powerful that it could break or cancel the source of the magecraft. Saber's armor is still fine, and invisible air is still functioning correctly. The spear is effective only the instant it hits the blade. Apparently at that instant, it cuts off the flow of prana, and renders it powerless. Indeed, it is not a noble phantasm one could be proud of its destructive power, but it has an ability that can be quite a threat. It is not an exaggeration to say the quality of a servant's weapon is determined on the prana, or the magical abilities it carries. But in the hands of this lancer, it can be predominant against a servant who finds pride in the power of his armament.
You'll have to give up on the protection of your armor, Saber. In front of my spear, you're as good as naked.
Saber snorted at Lancer's bantering words.
It's a bother to see you triumph over just peeling off my armor.
Recognizing the threat of Lancer's spear, Saber still had no fear in her heart. The situation still hasn't been decided. That moment, the silver armor covering Saber's entire body scattered in every direction in a splash. Irisfield gulped in surprise. Lancer observed. The chest plate, the gauntlets, the long tassets shaped like a skirt that protected the legs. Nothing was left. Saber had removed her armor by herself. The fragments of the armor scattering in a metallic dust immediately disappeared like a mist, as Saber cut off her prana.
If I cannot defend against your spear, I only have to strike instead. Prepare yourself, Lancer.
With a blue light dress, Saber resumed her stance. Lower, with her sword behind, she confronted Lancer one leg forward and the other behind. Without consideration for defense, this stance was made for a lethal strike that would slice from one shoulder to the other. It was clearly visible to anyone that Saber intended to finish the battle with the next strike at the risk of her life.
That's brave. All or nothing, is it?
Lancer somehow seemed satisfied by finding again what he missed, but the tension was clearly noticeable in the tone of his voice. Having taken off her armor, Saber didn't gain just agility. The prana needed to form and maintain her armor was now available for use in her offense. This means a lot for the skill of prana burst that Saber possessed. A prana burst is the accumulation of prana in her weapon and her entire body, momentarily injecting an arbitrary vector for an exceptional boost of her abilities. So to speak, it is a jet blast of prana for her movements. She only had the thin body of a small girl, but this was the secret that allowed her to brandish her big sword with the combat style of a power fighter. The surplus of prana can be converted into mobility power for a close-range combat, but when Saber uses up to the prana needed for her armor in a prana burst, it could grant her 6 times that bonus in power and speed. This is perfect for the destructive power of a one-hit kill attack. The handicap of losing the armor was overturned by the advantage of throwing away her armor. This was Saber's conclusion to deal with the spear of exorcism of Lancer.
That heroism. This is a brave decision. I definitely don't hate that. If I dare say, that was my plan, Saber.
Like a matador facing a mad bull, he kept provoking her by lightly shifting from side to side in a low position. Not perplexed by those words, Saber replied with a bold smile.
How about it? How will you feel after receiving this?
Lancer understood. Saber's next charge will render the advantage of range of the long spear meaningless. If he can't grasp Saber's speed, he will meet his end when she will split him in two. Calmly studying the opponent's light footwork, Saber measured the timing of her strike. Lancer, too, was probably estimating the speed of her charge with the density of prana she put in her body. But she still has one more secret ready for that. By a little, just by a little, Lancer's movement weakens. The asphalt torn up into gravels created many obstacles for a good foothold. Lancer's movement stagnates a little when he puts strength into his legs. Saber didn't miss it. A loud bang roars in the atmosphere. The golden sword that was invisible until then turned over the darkness of the night with its brilliance. The invisible air that compresses the air and refracts light in an illusion can be used in another way. The instant the bounded field is released, it can blow the opponent with a single long-distance strike with a gale made out of the super-high pressure of the condensed air. And this was the application of Saber's plan. The point of holding the sword backward in a wide stance was for that, to accelerate the air strike even more. Released from the golden sword, a jet of air comes out from behind Saber. By releasing her armor to increase her prana burst further, her body changes into a supersonic bullet. At this point, Saber's speed is 3 times higher than normal. It's already too late for an ambush attack or an evasion the instant she steps forward. Even if Lancer's spear can deal a serious wound to Saber, he will receive a lethal strike the same instant. That is certainly a strike made to risk one's life for a certain victory, ready to even have her flesh cut or her bones severed. Breaking through the wall of air at several times the speed of sound, the shockwave of the rush blew the surrounding rubbles like leaves. Lancer didn't move. Having already given up on an ambush attack, the tip of the red spear didn't flinch. What moved instead was his legs. With an extremely focused mind, the flow of time, even shorter than an instant, stretches and grows slower. That moment, Saber knew. The opening in Lancer was a bluff. It wasn't a coincidence that Lancer missed a step. He had placed himself to stop at the right position. In other words, the position Lancer had chosen for his victory was the spot where he had switched from 2 spears to 1, dropping the short spear in his left hand. Lancer's words were resurrected in her mind. That was my plan. Saber saw it at that time, Lancer's threatening smile when he was sure of his victory. The glint in his eyes had spoken more than his words. I will strike for your imprudence. Instead of picking the spear with his arm, Lancer kicked the gravels at his feet. It's not just gravels that flying in the air. The short spear that Lancer dropped earlier, its tip is accurately springing up through the air in Saber's direction. The amulet wrapped around the whole spear, just like the long one, was already unfastened, reveals the yellow metal under it. Saber's sixth sense can theoretically surpass thought for a natural talent for battle decision, but it didn't predict her blunder. One normally wields one spear with both hands. That was the trap of the misconception. She could only regard as bluff the capacity to have a spear in each arm. If that was Lancer's way with the spear, if that servant was the heroic spirit known as the bearer of the 2 demonic spears, yes, a noble phantasm is definitely not limited to one. The short spear that Lancer had kicked up, its tip was swirling with a prana just as sinister as the long red one glaring at Saber. It was already predicting the instant it would pierce Saber's throat, as she could only charge forward too late to break.